They do that. Let's take you across the street, just behind our broadcast location, to the west front of the Capitol, where the inauguration itself will take place, and CBS News correspondent Bob Schieffer. Bob, what's happening over there?
Well, we're getting closer and closer, Dan. A lot of the wives of the members of the Senate and House are beginning to come in now, and behind me, just behind the podium, the people that are beginning to come in here now, Dan, are people who have been friends of Bill Clinton over the years, personal friends, people who have worked in his campaign. And I want to tell you, this is one happy little crowd. Everybody that's coming in here is talking about what a great day it is and how excited they are to be here. And how could you deny them that after a long, tough campaign like this one? To come to an inauguration like this and have such a beautiful day as is shaping up here. Out in front of me now, at least 100,000 people, Dan, already here at the Capitol, filling in the spectator seats. This is going to be one of the more spectacular inaugurals, I think, that certainly I've seen, and I've seen all of them since, I guess, 1964.
Bob, let's pick up a little of the music from the Marine Band. If you were here today and out front Capitol, this is what you would be seeing and hearing at the moment. Later on, of course, they'll be playing Sousa and other marches as the excitement builds for the swearing in of the new president. Question, how is Chelsea Clinton handling all this? How is she handling the move from Little Rock and all the attention and the limelight? I spoke with President-elect Clinton about that in our interview for 48 Hours tonight, asked him about how Chelsea, his daughter, was handling it. And he said very well, but he obviously made it very clear that he is a concerned father because it's not an easy transition for a child to make. Jackie Adams has been checking into this. Jackie?
Yes, Dan. President-elect and Mrs. Clinton have been grinning ear to ear for much of this week, caught up in the excitement of starting their new lives and new jobs across the street here at the White House. By contrast, though, much of the time, their 12-year-old daughter, Chelsea, has been the picture of pure misery. It started on Saturday night. Chelsea's tearful reluctance to leave her friends in Little Rock delayed the Clintons' departure. But who wouldn't react that way? It's hard enough to be her age, too old to be a child, but not quite a teenager, and horror of horrors, already she's the butt of jokes on Saturday Night Live.
They just, make fun of the way she looks. Big red wig on, and it was it was on Saturday Night. And she had really big lips and a long nose. She's just a kid, and she can't really,
she's open. She didn't ask to be, open. I'm sure she doesn't want Saturday Night Live to be making fun of her.
Chelsea's facing a tough crowd in Washington. That 12- and 13-year-old set, Kelly and Kate, Bailey, Susan, and Eileen have already sized up the new girl in town, and none of them would want to trade places with her.
She will have to have the Secret Service everywhere she goes. And she can't, it'd be kind of hard to date.
If I go out with my friends, my mom's not standing there being, well, you shouldn't do that. You should get off your bike.
Her mom's not
You should get off your bike and cross the street. And I just think it's going to be, she's going to have to be so perfect.
On the other side of town, an inner-city Girl Scout troop feels the same way.
You can't walk outside and go to the store because people have to follow you. Or you can't even go to a movies and sit, or even go to McDonald's.
You should be able to do what you want to do, go to the stores you want to go to without having people following you and saying you can't do this and you can't do that.
Chelsea is facing two major challenges. The first one, a new school. And there's still some lingering resentment here in Washington that she's chosen to go to the Tony private school, Sidwell Friends, instead of a D.C. public school. Even former President Jimmy Carter said he was disappointed by that decision. The other challenge that she faces is one that I learned in the last couple of days as I've been studying 12- and 13-year-old girls. Apparently, this is a time when they need their independence, when they're just trying their wings, when they need to be able to walk outside alone or go to McDonald's or go to a movie. And, of course, in this new life, in this fishbowl that Chelsea's facing, she won't be able to do that. Dan?
Jackie Adams, live from Lafayette Square. Our CBS News coverage of Inauguration Day. We'll continue in a moment, so stay here with us.
These three such very good friends wanted a glorious son of St. Thomas. But one evening, the tall one lost her money and her credit cards. And as soon as she mentioned Citibank Visa, no problem, I told her. Call this minute. Go on. They're open all the time. Well, she got a new card in one day. I see credit cards from all around the world, and with Citibank, it's always the same thing. No problem.
Not just Visa, Citibank Visa.
It's really important that the dog be bred right and then be fed right.
Tom Wilson, top breeder of champion Weimaraners.
I think pedigree is the one dog food that has the kind of chunks of meat in it that the dogs really like. Pedigree meat and the pedigree mealtime dry mixed together is the best combination I've ever found for my dogs. I've been feeding pedigree for almost 10 years now, and my dogs do so well on it I wouldn't change a thing.
Pedigree, developed with vets, recommended by top breeders.
You're going on a trip. Please remember your parking space number. Oh, and your flight number, your gate number, your seat number, your confirmation number, your credit card number, your room number, the number in your party, and finally, your calling card number. Or just forget that last one and get a phone card from Sprint. Then all you've got to know is your home phone number and 4 digits. It's easy. And hey, if you can't remember your home phone number, you shouldn't leave home.
Some people get nasal congestion, but if you get sinus congestion, use a sinus spray like Sinex. Only Sinex has a decongestant plus Vicks Vapors, so you can feel your swollen passages open up. For sinus, think Sinex.
If we were to take the shells out of Velveeta shells and cheese and add rotini pasta and tender broccoli to our rich, creamy Velveeta cheese sauce, you know what would happen? Something good. Try Velveeta rotini and cheese with broccoli.
CBS News Inauguration Day coverage will continue.
She lived in two worlds but belonged to neither.
Dare you kiss my slave?
Loved by many, she saved her heart for one.
I love you with all my heart.
A child of the plantation and a woman before her time.
I just want what's truthfully mine.
Discover the roots of a new generation. Alex Haley's Queen begins Sunday, February 14th.
This is CBS. The Clinton inauguration festivities are in full swing here in Washington. I'm Joe Quinn.
And I'm Ann Jansen. How are Arkansans preparing for the inauguration?
We'll show you during inaugural reports live from Washington.
Tonight at 6 on KTHV 11 Action News.
Brandon House Furniture presents high-style elegance.
Normally.
Our team with live reports from Washington at noon, 6 and 10.
CBS News presidential inauguration coverage continues. From Capitol Hill, here is Dan Rather.
And strike up the band. We have asked the United States Army's field band to play some selections for us to help get us in the mood for what's happening this inauguration day. So let's look and listen to the U.S. Army field band. To the strains of the Stars and Stripes Forever, as especially played for our CBS News coverage live today, and scenes of your capital, the capital of the United States. What's happening at the White House now is that the presidential motorcade has formed up, and after the coffee, the official party will be leaving the White House, departing the White House for the drive about a mile from the White House up to Capitol Hill, what I like to call the Freedom Mile. The motorcade will go up. There'll be the official inauguration ceremonies in the west front of the Capitol. This is the route they'll be taking. And at the Capitol, after they have this swearing-in ceremonies, they'll have lunch there, and then the parade will start and they'll come back down Pennsylvania Avenue from there. CBS This Morning correspondent Harry Smith is along the parade route. Harry, it's turned out to be, you couldn't ask for a much better day. I was afraid it was going to be too cold.
It is a glorious day, and there is a buzz on Pennsylvania Avenue, Dan. It is just amazing. We've got Bill Bianchi here, along with his wife, Marla. This is a very important illustration here. They are standing far apart, not because they don't like each other, but you got here at what time this morning?
4:15 this morning.
How come?
Well, we wanted to stake out the park bench.
So they've got their park bench back here with a picnic basket and everything back here. And Marlis, you're standing away from your husband. How come?
To protect their space.
So this is a very, very serious business here with the parade here today. What's inside of you that makes you feel like you had to come here and have a front row seat?
Well, my wife talked me into it, and I got a sleeping bag, and I stayed in that for 3 hours and to stay warm, and then it was well worth it. I'm excited, finally.
There are people, lots of people excited here. We've got a lot more stories to tell you, Dan, up and down Pennsylvania. We're at 7th and Pennsylvania, and we'll have lots more for you as the day goes along.
Thanks, Harry. You look like you're having a good time. And if you can't have a good time at this, when are you going to have it? We have some news that it has now been confirmed that President Bush signed a document. He actually signed this document yesterday, we're told, extending Richard Cheney, Dick Cheney, as United States Secretary of Defense until 4 p.m. today, or until Congressman Les Aspin, the new Secretary of Defense designate, is sworn in, whichever comes first. Now, like all other members of the Bush cabinet, Cheney's term of office would have expired automatically at noon Eastern time today, but this unusual procedure was taken because of what's happening in the world and the possibility that the new commander-in-chief could have to order the military into action on a moment's notice. So this was a precaution, given Somalia, given what's happening in what used to be Yugoslavia, given Iraq and Saddam Hussein and all of that, that President Bush taking the prudent action of extending, if necessary, Dick Cheney to be Secretary of Defense until 4 o'clock this afternoon. We checked with our CBS News Defense Department correspondent David Martin, none better, about what's happening. He says at the moment nothing is happening in any of the hot spots around the world that would require any action. Both northern and southern no-fly zones in Iraq reported to be quiet. A U.S. Marine was unfortunately wounded last night in Somalia, but is now reported to be in excellent condition. Secretary of Defense Cheney, he is still Secretary of Defense, is home packing with his wife Lynn, we're told, and does not plan to come in. Sort of an interesting development as we await the unfolding of the ritual. Next step to be moving from the White House up to the west front of the Capitol by motorcade. The motorcade has formed, but the official members of the party, led by Senator Wendell Ford, Democrat of Kentucky, who is the committee chairman for the inauguration, they have not yet actually entered the motorcade. So that gives me a chance to turn to our old friend and tutor, Professor William Leuchtenberg, American history professor at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. Good to be with you again, Doctor. We talk a lot about the inauguration address and the inauguration ceremonies, but is all that really important in setting a tone and a spirit for a new administration?
Well, for the most part, those presidents who have been effective have set the tone, and from the very beginning, this was true of the very first inauguration in this city of Thomas Jefferson. At the time he was elected, it was the first time that parties had changed power in what was called the Revolution of 1800, and there was great anxiety about that, and Thomas Jefferson said, we are all Republicans, we are all Federalists, reassuring the country. In Lincoln's second inaugural, often regarded as the greatest inaugural of all times, he said, we spoke words of reconciliation that would cue the rest of his administration. But I think it's most of all Franklin D. Roosevelt in 1933 coming to power at a time of one of the darkest hours in the history of the Republic and saying that there was nothing to fear but fear itself, and calling for action now. The words that drew the largest applause out here on the plaza on that grim day in March, and set the tone for what would be the historic first 100 days of 1933.
What about honeymoons? You read the papers, watch and listen to television, and everybody, present company accepted, of course, has been saying, well, the honeymoon's over. But does this or doesn't this not usually happen with incoming presidents, new presidents, that people say, oh, well, the honeymoon's over even before it starts?
Well, this is a pretty much a foreshortened one. That it's the first time I can recall that there's been a president whose honeymoon got cut short, in a sense, even before the nuptials began. And this, I think, is largely a press phenomenon. I was telling the Washington Post last week that I got a call from the Atlanta Constitution immediately after Clinton was elected, and they wanted to know a day or two afterwards whether his failure to make appointments was an indication that he was as slow as president-elect as he was as governor. I said, have a heart. He has not yet had a chance. And I don't think the country has that same feeling that we're reading day by day in the press, that he's been all that tardy.
I agree with that. I think the sense, for whatever maybe my judgment is the country is pulling for him. Polls reflect that. Even people who didn't vote for him say, hey, give the guy a chance. We're pulling for him, praying for him. Let's go back to Connie Chung at Lafayette Park. Connie?
Dan, I was just talking to Betsy Wright, who is a former chief of staff to Governor Clinton for 7 years and a 20-year friend. Talking to her about what might be going through the minds of Governor Clinton, Hillary, and Chelsea. And she said Governor Clinton is probably so proud of himself that he's on time. He wants a few attaboys from his friends there. And she said Chelsea is probably so enamored with the White House. She wants to go on a tour. She wants to look around. She doesn't really want to hear what anyone has to say. And she said Hillary is probably the only one who's focusing on the moment. Dan, can you hear me there?
I do hear you, Connie.
All right.
I paused only for a second because I wasn't sure that you had a little tape package. But again, this is live television. That'll happen from time to time.
Well, why don't I mention one other thing? You know, there was a report that the White House seems to be kind of like a museum now. All the personal mementos have been taken down, the family pictures, the Bush family pictures. And that, you know, you have to wonder if President Bush was walking the halls last night and sort of taking one last look, because Governor Clinton was able to sort of work through the sadness, as he said. Remember when we were watching him as the mansion was being cleared of all his furniture? Here we are. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you very much, Connie. And this is a camera eye view from outside the Blue Room of the White House. I think they're still in the Blue Room. Yes. You saw Speaker Tom Foley, the Speaker of the House, Democrat from Washington State. Look out there. The motorcade is all formed up. It's just a question of when they're going to leave the White House and start the motorcade from the White House to go up to the Capitol. They're waiting among thousands of others. The west side, the sun-splashed west front of the Capitol is CBS News correspondent Bob Schieffer. Bob, a lot of visiting going on up there. Governor Clinton isn't the President-elect Clinton is not the only man in town doing a lot of talking today.
Well, that's right. This is kind of like a cocktail party without the cocktails, Dan. A lot of old friends gathered here, meeting new friends, and people taking pictures of each other. Picking up on one thing you were talking about the president signing that order for Dick Cheney to be Secretary of Defense until 4 o'clock. That ought to work out just about right. They are scheduled to convene the Senate later this afternoon after the ceremony, and Majority Leader George Mitchell told me last night they hope to vote to officially confirm 3 of the cabinet members, Lloyd Benson, the Treasury Secretary, Warren Christopher, Secretary of State, and Les Aspin to be Secretary of Defense. So Mr. Aspin will officially be the Secretary of Defense at about 3 o'clock this afternoon if all goes as expected. So I suspect part of that was what the president had in mind when he signed that order, making Secretary Cheney the official Secretary of Defense up until that time.
Bob, let me ask you something.
Yes,
Sorry to
sure.
interrupt. Let me ask you something. Is that the Ballard High School choir from Kentucky singing in the background?
Yes, it is, and they're up above us. Now, you wonder, why is there a Kentucky choir here? Well, there are also some Arkansas choirs, but Senator Wendell Ford, who is the chairman of this inaugural event, is from Kentucky. So I don't know that that has anything to do with having a choir for Kentucky, but that would certainly be a possibility, wouldn't it?
Bob, you're talking, yes, I would say fairly strong possibility that we will hear My Old Kentucky Home performed by the Ballard High School Choir, and also a little later on Shenandoah. We're looking forward to that. Now, out from the White House, Hillary Clinton and the official party has started to move. Let's pause for a moment and just watch and listen. As President Bush and Vice President Quayle walk out of the White House and out of power, President-elect Clinton and Vice President-elect Gore walk out and prepare to walk into power. Barbara Bush with Hillary Clinton there. They've apparently struck up a pretty good acquaintanceship and really have gotten along quite well. Now, about these two men, it's a little less clear. But having said that, one wants to point out two things. One, there's generally some understandable tension between the outgoing president who's been defeated and the incoming president who beat him. And the other thing to note is that President Bush does seem to have gone out of his way to do what he could, along with Mrs. Bush, to make the transition of power smooth and as comfortable as possible for the Clintons.
Last limousine ride as president, that car becomes Mr. Clinton's in an hour, Dan.
That's right. It's President Bush's limousine now. When it comes back a couple of hours from now, it'll be President Clinton's limousine. Same way with the helicopter, which will take President Bush away from the Capitol after Bill Clinton is sworn in. He'll be riding the helicopter as a former president.
Have they left yet?
North portico of the White House in the background. Limousines rolling in the foreground. Out the one of the front gates of the White House, heading up Pennsylvania Avenue, where we'll see the swearing in of a new president shortly, and hear a presidential inaugural address, lo and behold, actually written by the incoming president. As the music comes up from the Capitol itself, perhaps we could bring that in, play it over the motorcade as it starts to roll. Our CBS News coverage will continue in a moment.
Wow, you folks look like experienced travelers.
Well, we are staying at a Clarion hotel.
Did you know if you pay for your room with the American Express card, you can save 30%?
Sure, for business, for pleasure.
So, happy with your room?
Yeah, they told us if they couldn't make us happy, their first night's on them.
Ooh, sounds like a good deal.
Oh, and another thing.
At Clarion, they don't throw your luggage around. Tea?
Thank you. Clarion Hotels and the American Express card. For reservations, call 1-800-4CHOICE.
I used to think that having a bran muffin and coffee for breakfast was a great way to lose weight. Boy, was I wrong. Just one incredibly delicious Ultra Slim Fast fruit juice shake has less than half the calories and 75% less fat. In fact, it would be hard to find a breakfast this low in fat and calories and as high in this many of the nutrients doctors recommend. So a Slim Fast shake is a lot more than a great way to lose weight. It's a healthy way to start the day.
Because no other pain is like your headache pain.
Put the help where it hurts.
Now there's new aspirin-free Bayer Select for headaches.
Put the help where it hurts. With Bayer Select.
It contains 2 powerful aspirin-free ingredients and helps relieve pounding headache pain. So reach for new Bayer Select, the one for headaches, because all pain is not the same.
So you really like that, huh?
Oh, yeah. It's great.
Things you never heard about a bran cereal before.
It's bran.
It's what?
It's bran.
No, it isn't. Isn't bran mushy? These flakes are crunchy.
Kellogg's Frosted Bran is different. It's lightly frosted and very crunchy, even in milk.
Hey, Mom, the cereal you got? That's really good.
Kellogg's Frosted Bran. It sure doesn't sound like bran.
So you like them.
Take a close look at these 2 spaghetti sauces, Prego on the left and Ragu Old World Style on the right, and decide for yourself which one comes out on top. We think the message is getting through. Prego, homemade taste. It's in there.
2 of your favorites, M&M's and peanut butter, are together at last. M&M's peanut butter chocolate candies. The best thing to happen to peanut butter since jelly.
Continuing now our CBS News live coverage of the inauguration of President Bill Clinton. Let's check in with Harry Smith along the parade route. Harry?
Here.
Well, maybe Harry is not...
No.
Well, we'll go to Harry after a little bit. Stringing a little microphone cable there, and Harry getting himself in position. Harry is along Pennsylvania Avenue, and he'll see the motorcade bringing President Bush and soon-to-be President Bill Clinton up Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol. And then, of course, Harry, Paul Azan, Connie Chung, and others will be along the parade route this afternoon as we see Barney the Purple Dinosaur and thousands of other parade stars and interesting floats. You'll want to be around for the parade, and by all means, get the children in front of the television set. They'll enjoy it, too. I'm told that Harry Smith is ready now. Harry, are you there now?
Behind the rope, and if we look over our shoulders, you can see the first car going right by with President Bush and soon-to-be President Clinton. In the second car, I believe, are the first ladies. Folks here are pretty charged up. There, you can hear the crowd, Dan.
I can hear the crowd, and I know well, having been out there, Harry, that you have to be alert and you have to be quick, because the motorcade, even though it's traveling slowly, if you don't watch yourself, you have your back turned getting a sip of coffee, and poof, yep, it's gone. Further up the street is Linda Douglas. Linda? Well, I think Linda is being forced to get behind the ropes, as Harry was a little bit earlier.
There is a crowd here that has been standing here since dawn, many of them. They have come from all over the country, and of course most of them are Clinton supporters, though a lot of them are talking about hoping to catch a glimpse of President Bush. People here are holding up all kinds of signs in hopes that President-elect Clinton will see the signs. There is certainly one sign that indicates how accessible and how much a sort of representative of the common man some of these people think he is. A woman has a sign that says, "Bill and Hill, meet me at McDonald's." There are flags from Arkansas. There are children crowding along the rope line. And the motorcade is now going by this crowd that has been waiting patiently in weather that was very chilly this morning. There is a phalanx of Instamatic cameras and people screaming and waving as they finally see the president-elect in the cars bearing the first ladies and the vice president-elect, the vice president and their wives. Video cameras are pointed at the flags. People are holding up their children and waving. I just saw a woman wipe a tear from her eye. There's a lot of emotion, certainly among the youngest, the baby boom age people in this crowd who have been talking a lot about the rock and roll music. Yes. Yes, I do.
Well, as Linda Douglas picks up a conversation with some nearby bystanders there, she could give you some of the flavor and spirit of the parade route. And it's perhaps worth making that as you watch it on television, you sometimes don't absorb the emotion of these moments as people do who are watching live along the parade route. If an American inauguration can't bring a lump to your throat and a tear to your eye, if you don't feel as corny as Kansas in August, maybe you need a jump start and some vitamins. Joining me now is Sally Quinn, author, journalist, chronicler of Washington doings. Sally, Hillary Clinton, dressed in blue with her hat. A lot of talk around this city what her role will be. Will she be the first lady to have an office in the west wing of the White House, as opposed to just having what has been the norm for first ladies, an office in the east wing? What do you hear? What do you know?
Well, I think Hillary Clinton is a fabulous woman. She's incredibly strong and determined, and clearly he is very dependent on her in a lot of ways. I mean, he has already made that clear to everyone. I think she has several routes she can take, and it's not clear yet. I don't think she's quite decided how she's going to do it. I think that she probably is not going to be a traditional first lady. She probably will not go out and get some sort of a job of her own, establish her own base. I think that she may well try to sort of balance the two by having some sort of agenda of her own in the White House, which will be children's welfare, education. But I also feel that she's going to end up being quite a strong advisor to him in the White House. And that can often be troublesome if a first lady is perceived as a meddling wife. And that often happens when a first lady gets involved in front of the scenes as opposed to behind the scenes. So it's going to be very tricky for her. She is the first career woman who's ever been a first lady, and she has a new ground to break. And I think all the women in this country are watching her to see how she does it.
As we watch the live pictures of the arrival of the official motorcade, this is at the east side of the Capitol, down by the Law Library, and the greetings go on with the soon-to-be president and the outgoing president. Mrs. Bush, President Bush's side. Hillary Clinton just out of view of our camera at the moment with Bill Clinton. Let me ask you, Sally Quinn, there's been a lot of talk and some things in print, notably a New York Times Sunday magazine piece, which the Clintons and the Gores have taken great offense at, which suggested that there'd been some cooling. Chelsea Clinton walking in behind her father and mother now. They'll be going into a holding room to prepare for the inauguration. But, Sally, they both, what President-elect Clinton told me at Blair House, he said, listen, there's nothing to these. There's absolutely nothing to the report that I've cooled on Al Gore. And Vice President-elect Gore told me later in another interview, absolutely nothing to it. But there is a lot of talk around that something's happened between the two. What do you make of it?
Well, of course, they're not going to say anything to you about it. And I also think that there is this problem of the vice presidency, which is not the greatest role anyone can have. I mean, whoever has the vice presidency, even if he later becomes president, is going to have to take a backseat to the president. I do feel that he used Al Gore during the campaign because Al Gore was a very effective campaigner and he was an attractive candidate. But I do think that there has been some cooling and that the Clintons are very much to themselves. I think that there was a line that Al Gore thinks that it's going to be a co-presidency, but the co is not going to be him, it's going to be Hillary. And I think that there is something to that where a president might often confer with the vice president, I think that Clinton has Hillary to rely on. And so I think there is some worry among, particularly in the staff of Vice President-elect Gore, that he may end up having to take a back seat.
Dan Rather with Charles Kuralt and Sally Quinn, our CBS News coverage of the goings-on in Washington today. The swearing in of a new president will continue in a moment, so stay here with us.
Of President of the United States.
And unto Muffy and Lucky was born Blackie, and from Blackie issued forth Jerry and Terry and Perry, whereafter Perry begat Sugar and Spice. Then came Whitey the meek and Samantha the brave. The world was then graced by Bruce the good, Flip, and Georgette the Snuggly.
Purina Cat Chow brand cat food for cat chow care, generation after generation.
Snoggin and Snookums.
Because no other pain is like your headache pain.
Put the help where it hurts.
Now there's new aspirin-free Bayer Select for headaches.
Put the help where it hurts. With Bayer.
It contains 2 powerful aspirin-free ingredients and helps relieve pounding headache pain. So reach for new Bayer Select, the one for headaches, because all pain is not the same.
What you're about to see is not a pretty sight. Look what ugly tartar can do to your family's teeth. Now look at the difference when you see the dentist regularly and brush with a tartar control toothpaste like Aquafresh. Dentists know the ingredients in those Aquafresh stripes fight cavities and fight tartar buildup. As a mom, I know Aquafresh freshens breath with a taste the whole family loves. Even me. So we all like brushing more. Tartar Control Aquafresh. It's striped to fight.
We took whole roasted almonds.
Cover them in pure milk chocolate.
And a thin candy shell to get...
Ta-da! New M&M's almond chocolate candies.
The milk chocolate melts in your mouth.
Not in your hand. Sorry, fellas, I'm new here.
Now the original cleaner Prel Green is back.
Work.
Clean.
There's no cleaner clean.
Prel Clean.
CBS News coverage of the presidential inauguration will continue.
Kelly McGillis.
Picked up my kids.
Treat Williams.
I'm not retarded. Little slow. No big deal.
Based on a true story.
I'm in love.
Keep away from my brother. His family fought to keep them apart.
Just about give me back my faith in the human race.
But they were brought together by the bonds of love Sunday.
This is CBS.
Arkansas Today joins in the inaugural festivities with an hour-long show Wednesday, January 20th. Our own anchor team of B.J. Sands, Ann Jansen, and Joe Quinn will have live reports from Washington at noon, 6 and 10. Join us at noon for Arkansas Today.
Service is friendly people. Service is a smile. Service is a familiar face. Service is a caring touch. Service is someone who's always there when you need them. And at the Roller Funeral Homes of Arkansas, service is a tradition that grows stronger every day.
Gentlemen, he is not a happy man. This Mercury Villager is outselling our minivan, and as his top design team, we have to do something about it. He wants a minivan with a sliding rear seat and standard anti-lock brakes. He wants a minivan that is fully equipped, comfortable, and drives like a Mercury.
Why doesn't he just get a Villager?
The new front-wheel drive Mercury Villager. All this and the quality of a Mercury.
Bell room.
Inaugural reports live from Washington.
Tonight at 6 and 10 on 11 Action News.
CBS News presidential inauguration coverage continues. From Washington, here again is Dan Rather.
As the time draws ever nearer when we will swear in the new President of the United States, let's go to the west front of the Capitol building again, and Bob Schieffer. Bob?
Well, Dan, we've got a full house up here now. The entire United States Senate is sitting in front of me now and has moved in, and behind me, former President Jimmy Carter just arrived here on the podium just a moment ago with his Vice President, Walter Mondale. Mr. Carter will be the only former president on the podium today, even though once Bill Clinton is sworn in, we will have more living ex-presidents than at any time, I guess, back since, maybe since Abraham Lincoln was president. I believe we had 5 ex-presidents alive at that time. We will have 5, but 4 of those are Republicans, so the only one who will be here today is former President Carter. I'm told that Lady Bird Johnson had hoped to be here, but thought with the bad weather, or with the cold weather, it might be just best to stay back in Texas. But it's a real star-studded crowd here, Dan. I mean, if you like politics, you can see everybody in American politics, especially American Democratic politics today, on this podium. It's quite a crowd.
Well, Bob, I think you'll agree that like conventions, inaugurations may not always be great show business, but they are great theater. You can't beat them for dramatic impact, especially when you remember just how unusual how unique in history it is, how envied this peaceful transition of power at the top is. As some of the music picks up on the west front of the Capitol, let's turn to Charles Corral. Charles, as I saw former President Jimmy Carter in that crowd, I was thinking to myself, President Carter has to go down, as of this moment, as our most effective former president. I don't know of any president after he left office who's worked harder and done more than President Carter.
That's right. I think history may remember him for the things he did after he left the office, and that isn't usual, is it? Ordinarily, former presidents attend to their presidential libraries and write their memoirs. Jimmy Carter's been out there with hammer and nails building houses for poor people and trying, incidentally, in trips abroad to bring a little peace to the world. I think he's had a wonderful period after his presidency.
And Warren Christopher, who is the Secretary of State-to-be in the Clinton administration, served in the Carter administration, along with a number of others. The Clinton group, including the soon-to-be president, seemed to be a little reluctant to bring President Carter front and center, even for the inauguration. I noticed last night at the gala, they played videotape clips of recent former presidents, but unless I missed it, I don't think they played a clip of President Carter.
Well, people who are eager to criticize Bill Clinton, and already there are many of those, point out that for a new beginning, he certainly does have a lot of old Democrats in his administration. But where are you going to find experience except among people who once served Jimmy Carter?
I want to pick up a little of the music. Well, Charles, there aren't many things that Mr. Clinton can bring with him from Little Rock to Washington, but as you found out, he'd like to bring his favorite choir.
Yeah, I think it stung Bill Clinton, Dan, all this talk about Arkansas as a small, poor state during the campaign. This is an Arkansas show, in a sense, today. He brought every good thing he could think of from Arkansas, including a terrific black choir.
In fact, you could argue that it's the best black choir in the country. The Philander Smith College Singers won first place last year at the American Negro Spiritual Festival. Be good. They've been known to rehearse 10 hours at a single stretch. They sang so often for Bill Clinton that they became known around Little Rock as the Governor's Choir. Well, they're the President's Choir today.
We all love our President-elect Clinton very well.
The governor has become the president, and now a private black college's choir is being able to perform. So it's just saying, yes, you can.
Yes, you can. You can come from a little Methodist college that was founded in the last century to educate freed slaves, and you can work your head off and become nationally famous. And you can pack your bags and pile into the college buses that are Washington, D.C. bound.
We want to dispel all of the rumors about Arkansas being a small state and Little Rock a small town, you know, and just let the world know that we are a people that are very down to earth and we care about each other.
We wanted to show the country not only the love that we have in our choir, but what love we need for as our whole country as a nation.
Can you show the country a thing or two? If you're from little Philander Smith College today, yes, you can.
So when you see them, Dan, up there on the inaugural platform, they're going to sing an original composition, A City on a Hill, for the new president. When you see them, now you know who they are.
Thanks, Charles. We're looking forward to hearing and seeing that, as many other things. Maya Angelou, whom you interviewed on CBS this morning, is going to read a poem written especially for this occasion. I think that many of the school children watching today have probably read her autobiography. I know why the caged bird sings, because it's required reading in schools all over the country. So a lot of things coming up, and the anticipation grows among those people who are here waiting for it all to start, and Giselle Fernandez is out there among them in the crowd. Giselle?
Dan, I can't tell you, it's quite amazing to me, a piece of such a mass puzzle of people, if you will, standing shoulder to shoulder. You cannot move. People relatively quiet, chatting amongst themselves, and staring straight at the Capitol, just waiting to see a glimpse of history, if you will, in the making. I am standing with a new generation of passionate voters, they describe themselves, who voted for the first time passionately for Bill Clinton because of what? Hillary. These are young lawyers-to-be in Michigan. If you will, tell me, why did you vote for Bill Clinton, and why is Hillary a role model for you?
Hillary is a tremendous role model for all of us because she refused to sacrifice her own professional success for that of her husband. And she showed all of us that she can integrate her family and her career and be successful in both. And so she's given us some inspiration, young women like us, to do that as well.
Thank you very much. Dan, back to you.
Giselle Fernandez in the crowd here on this sparkling, sunshiny day in Washington, D.C. Temperature in the mid-30s now, I would guess, going up to probably a high in the neighborhood of 40 degrees. Couldn't pick a much better day. Couldn't be a much clearer and more inspiring scene as we look at the west front of the Capitol, where the swearing in of a new president will be happening, well, within the next half hour. We'll be back to help you see, hear, and experience it all after these messages.
Kraft singles taste better because they're made from 5 ounces of milk. How do they do that?
Well, the mommy cow sprinkles the milk into the cheese till it got real big. Then she irons it till it got real smooth.
More milk means better taste, and every Kraft single is made from 5 ounces of milk.
Excellent.
Unlike imitation cheese made mostly with oil and water, milk makes Kraft singles taste better.
K-R-A-F-T. Bye.
Old problem? New freedom. Old problem? New freedom. Introducing New Freedom. New Ultra Thin Maxi. The only one with this new Moisture Lock strip to help moisture stay where it belongs, in the center. Old problem, new freedom. Old problem, new freedom. New freedom, new Ultra Thin Maxi.
While no medicine can stop a cough completely, there is one that in 30 minutes can so significantly reduce your coughing, it's guaranteed or your money back. Vicks Formula 44. No wonder doctors recommend Formula 44's cough medicine 3 times more than codeine. Formula 44. Because the fewer the coughs, the better.
Guess what's made for your Ultra Downy bottle? The Ultra Downy refill. You don't even add water to the bottle. And the tiny cap makes all this fluffy softness. Forget big bottles and big caps. The Ultra Downy refill and your little Ultra Downy bottle. They're made for each other.
It's crystal clear. It's new from Cascade. Crystal Clear Rinse Agent. It adds an extra burst of Cascade sheeting action in the rinse cycle to wash away dulling residue for dishes that absolutely sparkle.
Barbara Bush with Hillary Clinton arriving on the recently built-up platform, west front of the Capitol. Ruffles and flourishes, hail to the chief. Will be heard by President Bush and Vice President Quayle for the last time in office in just a few moments. The President and Vice President will be arriving on the platform next. The Marine Band, after ruffles and flourishes and Hail to the Chief are performed, the Marine Band will play. Handshake with former President Carter. As the strains of Hail to the Chief fade away, one wonders if President Bush, in these last moments of his presidency, may not be thinking what might have been, what could have been, and in his mind, perhaps, what should have been. The new Vice President-elect, to be the first Vice President from Tennessee since Andrew Johnson. Andrew Johnson, of course, became president after being Vice President. He followed Abraham Lincoln into the White House after Lincoln's assassination. And Albert Gore, the son of a senator and a senator for a few minutes longer, will be the first Tennessean since Andrew Johnson to hold the office of Vice President of the United States. Perhaps you saw a few moments ago Hillary Clinton holding a Bible in her hand. That's the Bible that Bill Clinton will be using, that is, that he has supplied for his swearing in. Bill Clinton will be using the King James Bible, the one his grandmother gave him when he was a child. It's the same one he carried when attending church in Little Rock. It has badly battered edges. The new president is a Southern Baptist, as is the new vice president. President Clinton has selected a passage to which the page in the Bible will be opened from the epistle of Paul to the Galatians. Quote, "For he that soweth to his flesh shall of the flesh reap corruption, but he that soweth to the Spirit shall of the Spirit reap life everlasting."
President and Mrs. Carter.
Senator Wendell Ford of Kentucky, who's in charge of these ceremonies today.
Today, our nation bids a gracious goodbye.
This audio is faulty from the source, that is, from the West side of the Capitol and is not the Portuguese set nor the CBS transmission. We'll do the best we can.
42nd President of the United States. This peaceful and orderly transport of power that we will soon witness is a remarkable tribute to the genius
And what do you want to do this?
and the enduring strength of our political system and our proud national heritage. Indeed, the eyes of the nation and the world are on us now as we prepare to inaugurate William Jefferson Clinton as President and Albert Gore Jr. as Vice President of these United States. So President Bush, President-elect Clinton, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, as he has been called upon before, we now ask the Reverend Billy Graham to lead our nation in prayer. Reverend Graham.
Shall we pray? Our God and our Father, we thank you for this historic occasion when we inaugurate our new president and vice president. We thank you for the moral and spiritual foundations which our forefathers gave us and which are rooted deeply in Holy Scripture. Those principles have nourished and guided us as a nation in the past. But we cannot say that we're a righteous people, for we are not. We've sinned against you. We've sown to the wind and are now reaping the whirlwind of crime, drug abuse, racism, immorality, and social injustice. We need to repent of our sins and turn by faith to you. And now on this 20th day of January, 1993, we commit to you President-elect Clinton and Vice President-elect Gore, whom you have permitted to take leadership at this critical time in our nation's history. Help them always to see the office to which they've been elected as a sacred trust from you. We pray that you will bless their wives, who will share so much of the responsibility and burdens. May President-elect Clinton know that he is never really alone, but that the eternal God can be his refuge, and he can turn to you in every circumstance. Give him the wisdom you have promised to those who ask, and the strength you alone can give. We thank you for his predecessor, President Bush, and the dedication he gave to this office. Bless him as he and Mrs. Bush continue their dedicated service to our country in other spheres. We commit this inaugural ceremony to you and ask that the memory of this event may always remind us to pray for our leaders. I pray this in the name of the one who was called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Everlasting Father, and the Prince of Peace. Amen.
Now the Philander Smith Choir performs The City on the Hill.
Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my pleasure to present the Philander Smith Collegiate Choir from Little Rock, Arkansas. The choir, under the direction of Stephen L. Hayes, will perform City on the Hill, composed by Dr. Marvin V. Curtis.
Just in the loyalty and the
Ladies and gentlemen, I now present Justice Byron White, who will administer the vice presidential oath of office to Albert Gore, Jr.
Justice White was appointed to the court by President John Kennedy. He was President Kennedy's only appointee to the Supreme Court.
Senator, you will raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Albert Gore, Jr., do solemnly swear.
I, Albert Gore, Jr., do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
That I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same.
That I take this obligation freely.
That I take this obligation freely.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
Without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion.
That I will well and faithfully perform.
That I will well and faithfully perform.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
The duties of the office on which I am about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
And I know you will, Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. Justice.
Hail Columbia by the Marine Band. To be followed by God of Our Fathers.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to have one of the world's best-known sopranos participating in today's ceremony, who will perform an American medley that includes Simple Gifts by Aaron Copland and Make a Rainbow by Portia Nelson. From the Metropolitan Opera, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Marilyn Horne.
Marilyn Horne has had an incredible 38-year career. She's a lifelong Democrat who sings with the Metropolitan Opera at Lincoln Center in New York City.
Will
Marilyn Horne, followed by the Marine Band, to be followed by Senator Wendell Ford, who will introduce the Chief Justice of the United States. The Libertyville March, the idea here is for the Marine Band to fill with music so the timing can be precise. Swearing in the presidential oath, the beginning of it, the administering of the oath is to be 11:59:25 Eastern Time. And up there in the living room or wherever you are, if your toe taps, or even if your eyes brim, no need to apologize, and by all means, don't stop. That's what it's about. These are the last seconds of the George Bush presidency, leading to the first seconds of the Bill Clinton presidency. The passing of the post-World War II generation leadership to that of the 1990s.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Chief Justice of the United States, who will administer the presidential oath of office to William Jefferson Clinton. Chief Justice.
Chief Justice William Rehnquist was an original appointee of President Nixon. He was made Chief Justice by President Reagan.
Governor, are you ready to take the oath? I am. Will you please raise your right hand and repeat after me? I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear.
I, William Jefferson Clinton, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
That I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
And will to the best of my ability.
And will to the best of my ability.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
So help me God.
So help me God.
Congratulations. Salute. Hail to the chief.
chief. President Clinton becomes the first new president in nearly a quarter of a century, 25 years, to take office with U.S. troops on combat duty abroad.
We're getting ready to do it now. Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America, William Jefferson Clinton.
My fellow citizens, today we celebrate the mystery of American renewal. This ceremony is held in the depth of winter, but by the words we speak and the faces we show the world, we force the spring. A spring reborn in the world's oldest democracy that brings forth the vision and courage to reinvent America. When our founders boldly declared America's independence to the world and our purposes to the Almighty, they knew that America, to endure, would have to change. Not change for change's sake, but change to preserve America's ideals: life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. Though we march to the music of our time, our mission is timeless. Each generation of Americans must define what it means to be an American. On behalf of our nation, I salute my predecessor, President Bush, for his half-century of service to America. And I thank the millions of men and women whose steadfastness and sacrifice triumphed over depression, fascism, and communism. Today, a generation raised in the shadows of the Cold War assumes new responsibilities in a world warmed by the sunshine of freedom, but threatened still by ancient hatreds and new plagues. Raised in unrivaled prosperity, we inherit an economy that is still the world's strongest, but is weakened by business failures, stagnant wages, increasing inequality, and deep divisions among our own people. When George Washington first took the oath I have just sworn to uphold, news traveled slowly across the land by horseback and across the ocean by boat. Now the sights and sounds of this ceremony are broadcast instantaneously to billions around the world. Communications and commerce are global. Investment is mobile. Technology is almost magical. And ambition for a better life is now universal. We earn our livelihood in America today in peaceful competition with people all across the earth. Profound and powerful forces are shaking and remaking our world. And the urgent question of our time is whether we can make change our friend and not our enemy. This new world has already enriched the lives of millions of Americans who are able to compete and win in it. But when most people are working harder for less, when others cannot work at all, when the cost of health care devastates families and threatens to bankrupt our enterprises great and small, when the fear of crime robs law-abiding citizens of their freedom, and when millions of poor children cannot even imagine the lives we are calling them to lead, we have not made change our friend. We know we have to face hard truths and take strong steps, but we have not done so. Instead, we have drifted, and that drifting has eroded our resources, fractured our economy, and shaken our confidence. Though our challenges are fearsome, so are our strengths. Americans have ever been a restless, questing, hopeful people, and we must bring to our task today the vision and will of those who came before us. From our revolution to the Civil War, to the Great Depression, to the Civil Rights Movement, our people have always mustered the determination to construct from these crises the pillars of our history. Thomas Jefferson believed that to preserve the very foundations of our nation, we would need dramatic change from time to time. Well, my fellow Americans, this is our time. Let us embrace it. Our democracy must be not only the envy of the world, but the engine of our own renewal. There is nothing wrong with America that cannot be cured by what is right with America. And so today we pledge an end to the era of deadlock and drift, and a new season of American renewal has begun. To renew America, we must be bold. We must do what no generation has had to do before. We must invest more in our own people, in their jobs, and in their future, and at the same time, cut our massive debt. And we must do so in a world in which we must compete for every opportunity. It will not be easy. It will require sacrifice. But it can be done, and done fairly. Not choosing sacrifice for its own sake, but for our own sake. We must provide for our nation the way a family provides for its children. Our founders saw themselves in the light of posterity. We can do no less. Anyone who has ever watched a child's eyes wander into sleep knows what posterity is. Posterity is the world to come, the world for whom we hold our ideals, from whom we have borrowed our planet, and to whom we bear sacred responsibility. We must do what America does best, offer more opportunity to all, and demand more responsibility from all. It is time to break the bad habit of expecting something for nothing from our government or from each other. Let us all take more responsibility, not only for ourselves and our families, but for our communities and our country. To renew America, we must revitalize our democracy. This beautiful capital, like every capital since the dawn of civilization, is often a place of intrigue and calculation. Powerful people maneuver for position and worry endlessly about who is in and who is out, who is up and who is down, forgetting those people whose toil and sweat sends us here and pays our way. Americans deserve better. And in this city today, there are people who want to do better. And so I say to all of you here, let us resolve to reform our politics so that power and privilege no longer shout down the voice of the people. Let us put aside personal advantage so that we can feel the pain and see the promise of America. Let us resolve to make our government a place for what Franklin Roosevelt called bold, persistent experimentation, a government for our tomorrows, not our yesterdays. Let us give this capital back to the people to whom it belongs. To renew America, we must meet challenges abroad as well as at home. There is no longer a clear division between what is foreign and what is domestic. The world economy, the world environment, the world AIDS crisis, the world arms race, they affect us all. Today, as an old order passes, the new world is more free but less stable. Communism's collapse has called forth old animosities and new dangers. Clearly, America must continue to lead the world we did so much to make. While America rebuilds at home, we will not shrink from the challenges nor fail to seize the opportunities of this new world. Together with our friends and allies, we will work to shape change lest it engulf us. When our vital interests are challenged or the will and conscience of the international community is defied, we will act. With peaceful diplomacy whenever possible, with force when necessary. The brave Americans serving our nation today in the Persian Gulf, in Somalia, and wherever else they stand are testament to our resolve. But our greatest strength is the power of our ideas, which are still new in many lands. Across the world, we see them embraced and we rejoice. Our hopes, our hearts, our hands are with those on every continent who are building democracy and freedom. Their cause is America's cause. The American people have summoned the change we celebrate today. You have raised your voices in an unmistakable chorus. You have cast your votes in historic numbers, and you have changed the face of Congress, the presidency, and the political process itself. Yes, you, my fellow Americans, have forced the spring. Now we must do the work the season demands. To that work I now turn with all the authority of my office. I ask the Congress to join with me. But no president, no Congress, no government can undertake this mission alone. My fellow Americans, you too must play your part in our renewal. I challenge a new generation of young Americans to a season of service, to act on your idealism by helping troubled children, keeping company with those in need, reconnecting our torn communities. There is so much to be done. Enough indeed for millions of others who are still young in spirit to give of themselves in service too. In serving, we recognize a simple but powerful truth. We need each other, and we must care for one another. Today, we do more than celebrate America. We rededicate ourselves to the very idea of America. An idea born in revolution and renewed through 2 centuries of challenge. An idea tempered by the knowledge that but for fate, we, the fortunate and the unfortunate, might have been each other. An idea ennobled by the faith that our nation can summon from its myriad diversity the deepest measure of unity. An idea infused with the conviction that America's long, heroic journey must go forever upward. And so, my fellow Americans, as we stand at the edge of the 21st century, let us begin anew with energy and hope, with faith and discipline, and let us work until our work is done. The Scripture says, and let us not be weary in well-doing, for in due season we shall reap if we faint not. From this joyful mountaintop of celebration, we hear a call to service in the valley. We have heard the trumpets. We have changed the guard. And now, each in our own way, and with God's help, we must answer the call. Thank you, and God bless you all.
President William Jefferson Clinton. His inaugural speech, just over 1,500 words, not particularly long or short. Shortest inauguration speech, George Washington, 1793, his second inaugural, only 135 words. Longest on record, William Henry Harrison, 1841, 8,445 words. He literally talked himself to death. William Henry Harrison stayed out in the cold for that marathon speech and was dead within days. Let's go to Bob Schieffer.
Well, Dan, just by coincidence, the person sitting next to me happens to be President Clinton's press secretary, Dee Dee Myers, and you looked at your watch and said 14 minutes. Was that one of the aims?
Well, I just wanted to see how long it was going to be. It was a terrific speech. Really called the nation to a new season of service. I was very moved by it.
Historian and author.
All right, Dee Dee Myers, Dan.
Dr. Maya Angelou, to compose a poem for this historic day. From Winston-Salem, North Carolina, and Wake Forest University, please welcome Dr. Angelou.
Charles Kuralt has a word about the poet Maya Angelou.
She becomes only the second poet to read an inaugural poem from the inaugural platform. The first was Robert Frost. We remember that one, Dan.
Mr. President and Mrs. Clinton, Mr. Vice President and Mrs. Gore, and Americans everywhere. A rock, a river, a tree, hosts to species long since departed, marked the mastodon, the dinosaur, who left dry tokens of their sojourn here on our planet floor. Any broad alarm of their hastening doom is lost in the gloom of dust and ages. But today, the rock cries out to us, clearly, forcefully, come, you may stand upon my back and face your distant destiny, but seek no haven in my shadow. I will give you no hiding place down here. You, created only a little lower than the angels, have crouched too long in the bruising darkness, have lain too long face down in ignorance, your mouths spilling words armed for slaughter. The rock cries out to us today, you may stand upon me, but do not hide your face. Across the wall of the world, a river sings a beautiful song. It says, come, rest here by my side. Each of you, a bordered country, delicate and strangely made, proud, yet thrusting perpetually under siege. Your armed struggles for profit have left collars of waste upon my shore, currents of debris upon my breast. Yet today, I call you to my riverside, if you will study war no more. Come, clad in peace, and I will sing the songs the Creator gave to me when I and the tree and the rock were one. Before cynicism was a bloody sear across your brow, and when you yet knew, you still knew nothing. The river sang and sings on. There is a true yearning to respond to the singing river and the wise rock. So say the Asian, the Hispanic, the Jew, the African, the Native American, the Sioux, the Catholic, the Muslim, the French, the Greek, the Irish, the rabbi, the priest, the sheik, the gay, the straight, the preacher, the privileged, the homeless, the teacher. They all hear the speaking of the tree. They hear the first and last of every tree speak to humankind today. Come to me, here beside the river. Plant yourself beside the river. Each of you, descendant of some passed-on traveler, has been paid for. You who gave me my first name, you Pawnee, Apache, Seneca, you Cherokee Nation who rested with me, then forced on bloody feet, left me to the employment of other seekers, desperate for gain, starving for gold. You the Turk, the Arab, the Swede, the German, the Eskimo, the Scot, you the Ashanti, the Yoruba, the crew, bought, sold, stolen, arriving on a nightmare, praying for a dream. Here, root yourselves beside me. I am that tree planted by the river which will not be moved. I the rock, I the river, I the tree, I am yours. Your passages have been paid. Lift up your faces. You have a piercing need for this bright morning dawning for you. History, despite its wrenching pain, cannot be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again. Lift up your eyes upon this day breaking for you. Give birth again to the dream. Women, children, men, take it into the palms of your hands. Mold it into the shape of your most private need. Sculpt it into the image of your most public self. Lift up your hearts. Each new hour holds new chances for new beginnings. Do not be wedded forever to fear, yoked eternally to brutishness. The horizon leans forward, offering you space to place new steps of change. Here, on the pulse of this fine day, you may have the courage to look up and out and upon me, the rock, the river, the tree, your country. No less to Midas than the mendicant, no less to you now than the mastodon then. Here, on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out and into your sister's eyes and into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning.
A hug from Maya Angelou. Now of North Carolina by way of Arkansas. The new president of the United States from Arkansas hugs her, as Charles Perrault said, the first poet to read at an inauguration since Robert Frost did it at President Kennedy's inauguration in 1961. The Angelou poem speaking of urgency of action dictated by transience of time. Apostles call to us to move while we can. Seemed to be the thrust of that poem. Also, diversity and unity can mean strength.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of the 1993 presidential inauguration. As soon as the ceremony is over, my colleague on the Joint Congressional Committee on Inaugural Ceremonies, the distinguished Senator from Alaska, Ted Stevens, will form the presidential escort to the east front of the Capitol. To conclude our program now, please rise for the benediction by Reverend Billy Graham and remain standing for the singing of our national anthem by Marilyn Horne.
Our Father, we pray that as we come to the end of this ceremony, that we will long remember the challenges that we have heard. And we dedicate ourselves to do everything in our power to keep those challenges and to dedicate ourselves anew, not only to you, but to America and all the great ideals that we stand for. We pray again that thou wouldst bless the President and the Vice President as they lead us in the years to come. The Lord bless us and keep us. The Lord make his face shine upon us and be gracious unto us. The Lord lift up his countenance upon us and give us peace. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Billy Graham now 74 years old. Marilyn Horne.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so glory we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets rinsed clear, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Bill Clinton's mother with him. Up from Arkansas, and what a great time she's had here, and why not? What's going to happen now is, now that the inauguration has passed, and there is a new president of the United States pledging a new beginning, President Clinton saying in his inaugural address today, we pledge that the era of deadlock and drift is over. A new season of American renewal has begun, unquote. What they'll do now, after a little handshaking, greeting, is go inside for lunch. As we speak, the administration of President Bill Clinton is moving into the White House. With congratulations to President Bill Clinton and Vice President Al Gore. We'll take God Bless America as our go-out music to say CBS News coverage of Inauguration Day will continue in a moment.
Approach runway 23 right. Clear
CBS News coverage of the presidential inauguration will continue.
A new generation of leaders, shaped not by World War II, but by Vietnam. Eye on America covers the inauguration tonight on the CBS Evening News.
Every community's worst enemy, a cop gone bad.
You pay me once a week.
To catch him, a good cop must put his life on the line.
We lost him.
On Top Cops, then. Are you worried what your kids are learning about sex in the classroom? Wait till you find out what they're learning on the school bus.
I was shocked.
Street Stories following Top Cops Thursday.
This is CBS.
Arkansas Today joins in the inaugural festivities with an hour-long show Wednesday, January 20th. Our own anchor team of B.J. Sands, Ann Jansen, and Joe Quinn will have live reports from Washington at noon, 6 and 10. Join us at noon for Arkansas Today.
Try Jones in North Little Rock for inaugural savings on the all-new 93 Nissan Altima. Unlike our new president, you'll inhale in amazement when you see how much luxury you can get in the Altima at such an affordable price, just $12,999. Once you've test-driven the Altima, you'll take an oath that you'll never even look at a Honda Accord or Mazda 626 again. Inaugurate a new era of change in the contents of your garage with the 93 Nissan Altima. Only when you try a Jones Nissan Isuzu Subaru, a mile and a half north of McCain Mall in North Little Rock.
In 1 square mile of snow, the beautiful, the rich, and the powerful come to escape. And it's the closest two friends from Detroit will ever get to paradise.
What do you think? I think we'll be like the Beverly Hillbillies in that place. They pay you to be ski instructors, right? Hope you guys are good. We are the best skiers on this mountain.
There's about 100 guys. Maybe 2 make it till spring.
We'll make it.
Aspen Extreme.
Dream big and don't dream at all, baby.
Rated PG-13. Starts Friday, January 22nd.
Inaugural reports live from Washington.
Tonight at 6 and 10 on 11 Action News.
CBS News presidential inauguration coverage continues. From Washington, here again is Dan Rather.
And we have a new president of the United States, Bill Clinton, new vice president, Al Gore. With me is Charles Kuralt, Joe Klein from Newsweek magazine, and author, reporter, one of those who said early on Bill Clinton had a chance. Very quickly, gentlemen, what did you think of the speech, Joe?
Well, I was struck by how similar this was to the speeches he made during the campaign. George Bush always made a distinction between campaign mode and governing mode. For Bill Clinton, governing mode is very much like campaign mode. He talked about making change our friend. He talked about offering opportunity and demanding responsibility from Americans. He talked about national service, which was one of the most popular themes of his campaign. And above all, he talked about unity, about the fact that the things that we have in common are more important than the things that divide us. There was one new theme, though, one you never heard during the campaign, and that was about the need for sacrifice, which in American political life is a euphemism for taxes.
Well, let's come to the point. Are taxes going up at the gasoline pump?
Well, I would imagine that we're going to see something like that, although we can't predict exactly what yet. But that's new, and that may well determine the success or failure of the next 4 years.
Charlie, it didn't have a lot of poetry.
No, it was in many ways a rephrasing, wasn't it, of that famous inaugural speech of John F. Kennedy. Ask not what your country can do for you, as Joe says. He said, ask what you can do for your country in a number of ways, in a number of places in the speech. But it didn't soar and sing the way that famous Kennedy speech did.
Well, it was your line, I think, that he, perhaps if he wanted that, he could have used Ted Sorensen, still living, who helped write, if not write all of President Kennedy's speech. Joe?
I think this guy's probably more into hugging than he is into soaring or singing.
And there was plenty of poetry with Maya Angelou.
That was a lovely
I thought her poem was terrific.
And it was a good 1-2 punch with Bill Clinton. It was on the same theme. Renewal, the theme of brotherhood and sisterhood, and that's been Maya Angelou's message, of course, all her years as a writer.
And didn't she deliver it well? Let's go quickly up to just behind the podium, and Bob Schieffer. Bob?
Well, this is the point of the day here on the podium, Dan, where people are taking pictures. Everybody is slapping each other on the back. I just, as you heard a while ago, Dee Dee Myers, the president's new press secretary, happened to be sitting next to me during this. And when the oath of office was finally taken and Bill Clinton was sworn in, she let out a, well, what could best be described as a war whoop. I don't think I'd ever hear Marlon Fitzwater do that. I think you're seeing a change in style. This is a younger, youthful. These people are very happy. They're very proud of what they have done in this campaign. And it's just a really a happy atmosphere up here right now, Dan.
I know you join me, Bob, in noting that Marlon Fitzwater has performed absolutely yeoman service as press secretary. Yes, a little older, a little different style, but a tip of the cover to Marlon Fitzwater, who did a terrific job. What's happening now is we're showing you a high shot of the east side of the Capitol, the side where we used to swear in our new presidents. What's going to happen here is the new President of the United States, Bill Clinton, and the new Vice President Al Gore will be saying goodbye to now former President George Bush and former Vice President Dan Quayle. Joe Klein, he's president now. He promised that he could walk the talk. That is, that he would deliver on what he talked about. Your estimate of what is likely to be the first actions he takes so he can signal to people, I'm a new president with new ways and I am action-oriented. What's he going to do this week?
Well, I think that the first executive orders are going to be in the area of social policy, especially the area of abortion. He's going to lift the gag order. He's going to legalize, I think, the French abortion drug, RU-486. He will probably lift the ban on fetal tissue research. And he may well, from what I understand, lift the ban on homosexuals in the military. More important, and the more substantive things are going to be happening in the Oval Office, the meetings with economic advisors, and they're going to find out whether or not we are going to have that gasoline tax or some form of energy tax, what kind of sacrifice he's going to call for in a State of the Union address that'll come in the next few weeks. Though the exact nature of that plan isn't yet determined, although the outlines are beginning to form now.
Charles Carrault, we've been through some of these inaugurations, and there are times when a new president waits, ponders before he moves. I don't get the sense that that'll be the case with Bill Clinton. What do you think?
I don't think he's a waiter or a ponderer. I think he's a man of action, has been all his life. He has been thinking about this day since he was 16 years old on his first visit to Washington, actually hoping, if not planning, that someday this day would come. And I think he's had time to map out a really cohesive plan of action. And well, there will be some bumps along the way. I think tomorrow is, I believe, the 20th anniversary of Roe versus Wade, so there'll be some symbolism if he reverses some of the Bush administration's abortion stands.
He can do that to a limited degree through executive order. Notes handed to me that George Bush spent his final hours at the White House today saying some final goodbyes and strolling the grounds in solitude with his dog. Harry Smith is out along the parade route, now a little over an hour away at the parade, Harry, and now that the solemn moment and occasion of the inauguration itself is over, comes the fun in the parade.
Vice President and former Vice President and Dan and the poem. We're with people who have been out here for hours waiting for the parade to start. What'd you think of the speech?
Oh, I thought it was great. And I really feel good about everything. I think we are living in a new day now.
Harry,
How about
I'm
you, man?
sorry to say that...
Magnificent.
I'm sorry, Dan, what's that?
What's that is the president and vice president are coming out of the east side of the Capitol. I hate to interrupt. We'll get back to you soon.
Okay.
But wanted to get this goodbye moment. This is on the east front of the Capitol. Helicopter awaits to whisk former President Bush away, but it's no longer Marine One. A helicopter that carries the President of the United States is Marine One, and George Bush is now a former president.
What a burden that must be to have lifted from one's shoulders. In 1 minute, you have all the nuclear codes and the hotline telephone. The next moment, you're a private citizen with no power at all. As they were leaving, one of the guards, military guards, gave the two of them a very snappy salute, and it suddenly occurred, you could see, to Bill Clinton, I'm the one who's supposed to return this now. And he did.
Vice President and Marilyn Quayle. Vice President Quayle hoping, dreaming, planning to return. As president, hopefully as early as 1996. Make no mistake.
I expect we'll be seeing him in New Hampshire pretty soon. He's an attraction coming to a political hall near you in Iowa and New Hampshire, I would imagine, the next winter.
At the moment, Jack Kemp, former Housing Secretary and Congressman, and Dan Quayle vying to take the leadership of the more conservative factions within the Republican Party, hoping to build for 1996. And I suppose you'd have to include former Education Secretary Bennett on that list, would you not, Joe?
Texas Senator Phil Gramm, perhaps even former Secretary of State Jim Baker. You might see the political equivalent of the Oklahoma land rush before the next 4 years are out.
Great picture here. Barbara Bush, Hillary Clinton, hand in hand down the Capitol steps. Got to love this moment, Charles Corral.
It is. This is a noticeable change of generations, too. I think Barbara Bush may be a pretty happy woman today.
Randall Pinkston is at the east side of the Capitol. Randall?
And this is a moment that, of course, the Bushes never thought would happen. Mr. Bush said a few weeks ago that if he had no idea he was going to lose, so he had not made plans for the life after the presidency. But now that moment is upon him as he and his wife bid goodbye to President Clinton and Mrs. Clinton. They enter the Capitol building, Mr. and Mrs. Bush as the first family, and they leave as the ex-first family. Accompanying them on the helicopter to Andrews will be the Quayles. The Quayles will return to Washington. Mr. and Mrs. Bush will then board the 747 at Andrews and fly to Houston. On board will be family, friends, old staff members, people who have been with Mr. Bush since he came to Washington more than 30 years ago as a congressman and through all of his many jobs in public life subsequent to that. And in Houston, perhaps characteristic for George Herbert Walker Bush, he will not take a time to take a breath. He will plunge directly into work, heading straight for his office. Marlon Fitzwater told us earlier that Mr. Bush feels quite good as this burden is lifted from his shoulders. Dan?
Thanks, Randall. What you see and hear in your living room is the medium high shot, now a ground shot, on the east side of the Capitol as the Clintons and the Gores prepare to say goodbye to the Bushes and the Quayles.
The new president is standing very much alone there, isn't he, Dan?
There'll be a lot of that.
Yeah. It was interesting to note the body language. When Clinton showed up at the White House a couple of hours ago, George Bush was clapping him on the back, saying, "Welcome, welcome, son." And now that he's the president, you don't clap the president of the United States on the back, I don't think.
Charles, you made an interesting point that there are a lot of indications that Barbara Bush will be very pleased to be out of office, and that she may have urged President Bush not to run this last time. Been some speculation along that. But with President Bush himself, there's every indication that he fought his heart out during the campaign and that he really wanted a second term.
I think this has been a tough period on Mrs. Bush. She's been through 30 years of political life, too, don't forget. And she must hope that there's a little bit of private life left in their futures.
Now, President Clinton with Hillary Clinton will go back inside the Capitol. What will happen next? They'll go into the signing room. This is to sign an executive order on ethics, proclamation making January 22nd National Day of Fellowship, nominations of 19 cabinet posts, sub-cabinet nominations, and so forth. Right now, the chopper chops and prepares to leave.
It's a real amazing moment in American history. It's a generation going away. I mean, in a way, George Bush ended his presidency at the right moment. His generation fought the Cold War. They won it. It's over. And I think in a way it's appropriate that it ends here.
His generation fought World War II, Korea, Vietnam, and the Cold War, overlapping the incoming generation for part of that. Might be, probably will be, a flyby of the helicopter as the Clintons and the Gores wave goodbye to the Bushes and the Quayles. Might be a flyby, probably will be, of the helicopter just to circle the Washington Monument. Past presidents have written about the view from the presidential helicopter coming in, say, from Andrews Air Force Base outside of Washington in Maryland to the White House, saying it's a unique feeling which cannot be fully described when you're president and you're flying the helicopter by the Washington Monument and seeing the White House. President Johnson said there's never been anything in history like it. That is the feeling the president has with that. President Ford said somewhat the same thing. President Reagan said somewhat the same thing. Over the reflecting pool, over the mall, past the Washington Monument, with the Lincoln Memorial in the distance. The Bush presidency is over, and with it an era ends, 12 years of Republican leadership in the White House. A new era begins. President Bill Clinton, Vice President Al Gore, who have now gone back inside the Capitol. As we watch the helicopter circle fairly close by the Washington Monument and then now past the Capitol, I'll remind you our CBS News coverage of the presidential inauguration of 1993 will continue shortly. Stay here with us.
January, he was Mr. Right. February, Mr. Wrong. March, he's back. There's only one calling plan that adjusts with you. Off again, on again, never again. It's the Most from Sprint. The Most saves you on whomever you call the most each month. Even when it changes, it's automatic. Could be the easiest part of your relationship.
It may surprise you to learn who, over 30 years ago, was the first car maker to build cars with seat belts, to make safety glass standard, the first U.S. car maker to offer anti-lock brakes, and who today offers more models with dual airbags than any other manufacturer. That company is Ford Motor Company.
We're committed to making safety innovation an important part of quality.
Ford Motor Company. Quality is job one. It's working.
As the new president and much of the new administration prepares to have lunch under the Capitol Dome, let's go back to Bob Schieffer, who's where the inauguration and the climactic moment of this day, that what I call a magic moment, one of the most riveting moments in television, but it goes by so quickly most people miss it, when a new president of the United States is sworn in. Bob?
How you doing? Well, you know, Dan, the most remarkable thing about that moment is that there's no doubt about it. And there are very few places in the world where you can say that. The old president, when the time comes to go, goes. The new president comes and takes his place. Everybody shakes hands and the government continues. It really is a moment. It really is a dramatic moment and one that we take so often for granted, but one that many people in the world are not allowed to enjoy, I guess would be the way to put it.
And we see, Bob, that President Bush aboard the helicopter did get his last semicircle around the Washington Monument.
Well, we were wondering if he was going to do that. You know, Ronald Reagan did that, kind of a victory lap around the mall before heading on out to Andrews Air Force Base. I, in fact, had talked to some of the Clinton people and asked, would Mr. Bush do that? And they were not sure. Most thought he would not. But I think it's a rather nice touch at the end of this ceremony for the departing president to make that swing. They go kind of down Pennsylvania Avenue, turn at the Washington Monument, and then head on out to Andrews Air Force Base. And it's always one of the most dramatic parts of it for me, I must say.
Bob, you were mentioning, and I think perhaps sometimes we glide by it too quickly. One of the things that has helped make America a new thing in history, these United States, is the continual peaceful transfer of power at the top, without a sword being drawn, without armies on the move in the night. It happens under peaceful circumstances, such as today. Yes, we have U.S. fighting men and women in a combat situation in and around the Persian Gulf, but it has also happened, and this is the point, in times of tremendous stress, for example, after the assassination of President Kennedy, after the resignation of President Nixon. We know from history in so many societies of the past, cataclysmic events such as that make a transfer of power at the top violent and difficult, but not in this country.
Well, that's so true, Dan. And I mean, just think about it. I've never heard of another country. Perhaps there is one. But as far as I know, we're the only country that ever held a presidential election in the midst of the Civil War, in the midst of a civil war. And we did that. President Lincoln's second term began during the Civil War. So it is a remarkable thing. And as you say, we often take it for granted. But it's something, while we take it for granted, we ought not to forget what's happening.
Well, one who doesn't take it for granted is our friend Professor Luckenberg, who's back here with us, Professor of American History at North Carolina University, North Carolina. What do you think, Professor? Was it a great speech?
I think it was a middling speech. I'm not sure that there are many memorable lines that we'll be talking about, the way we were talking about earlier this morning, some of the lines of Jefferson and Lincoln and FDR. But he read it better than he has in the past. He spoke forcefully. And I agree with what Charles was saying, that it was a largely Kennedy-esque speech, a sense that there's a generation leaving the scene, there's a new generation coming to power. And I think he spoke very effectively to the ideals, to the hopes of that new generation.
As we talk over the live pictures from inside the Capitol of President Clinton, not President-elect now, President Clinton in the signing room, signing those documents we talked about earlier. Let me ask you this, Professor. What comes to your mind from a historical perspective as you think of the one-term presidency of George Bush?
Well, we've had a lot of one-term presidencies in recent times, or presidents who have been in one way in trouble or other. If you think of the history of the American presidency since 1960, the first president was murdered. The second president did not dare to run for re-election.
The third, Johnson.
President Johnson. The third president came close to being removed from office and resigned. The man who succeeded him was not re-elected. Ford. Carter had only a single term. Only Reagan has broken that pattern now. Once again, we're back to a one term in the White House with George Bush.
We are pretty hard on our presidents, I think, Dan. And this one, who is now performing his first duties of office in the Capitol building, may as well know that we're going to be hard on him, too, before very long. He's been president for less than an hour, and you can bet that though he's only 46 years old today, he'll be 56 in about a year.
How true it is. This was mentioned in passing when I talked with President Clinton yesterday for the 48 Hours program we're going to have on the air tonight. Just in passing, I said something about, it's a hard job and it really takes a toll and people are demanding. And President Clinton said, well, they demand excellence. What they're demanding is excellence. And then he went on to say, I hope I can deliver some excellence. He didn't say this, but inferentially, he got that sense of excellence partly when he had that turning point in his life when he appeared at the White House with President Kennedy. President Kennedy loved the word excellence and talked about excellence. And along with many others of his generation and about his age at the time, Bill Clinton obviously took that very seriously.
I think one of the surprising things about his address today was that he never directly quoted President Kennedy. The only American president, despite all of his attempts to associate himself with the past, whom he did quote was Franklin Roosevelt. And he quoted remarks that Roosevelt made actually before he became president. Those lines were from the Oglethorpe speech that he gave for the need for bold and persistent experimentation.
Just beyond the grace, the grandeur, the importance of the moment in this signing room at the Capitol, out there, just beyond the horizon, is Iraq, Saddam Hussein, and a host of other world problems. For a little perspective on that, let's go live to Baghdad and CBS News correspondent Bob Simon. Bob?
Dan, it's hard to remember when the inauguration of an American president was greeted with such joy in a foreign capital. People here just assume that the crisis is over. They assume it because Mr. Bush is gone, and Saddam Hussein succeeded in demonizing Mr. Bush, in convincing people that he was responsible for the crisis. People also feel the crisis is over because of the statement last night by the Revolutionary Command Council, making the kinds of concessions which people here just assume the Clinton administration needs to hear. I think that what we're in for now, Dan, is a period of testing. Saddam will be testing the new president in his own way. It will not be the kind of provocative testing which he leveled towards President Bush over the last several weeks. It'll be just the opposite. He's already let it be known that he'll let the UN inspectors in. He will certainly, I think, very shortly announce abidance with UN resolutions, and he'll be waiting for a signal from the new administration to see whether or not they are interested in the kind of dialogue which he needs. Dan?
Bob, you travel the Middle East. Among leading Arab diplomats and those in Israel, is or is it not the current judgment that former President Bush made a mistake when he didn't ensure the removal of Saddam Hussein when he clearly had the opportunity to do so at the end of the Persian Gulf War?
I think that's definitely perceived as a mistake by all sides around here. And if Saddam's objective this time was to expose the contradictions in the coalition that came at him 2.5 years ago, he certainly succeeded in that. We know that the French foreign minister today said that Mr. Bush overstepped the UN resolutions. The Egyptians have said the same thing. The Turks wouldn't let planes fly from Turkey. Saddam has won something of a victory here. Dan?
As seen from there, Bob Simon in Baghdad. Let me show you what's going to be coming up this afternoon. We still have a long way to go. Harry Smith, Paul Azan will be joining Charles Carlton and I for the inaugural parade beginning at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Long parade, beautiful parade, maybe one of the best. Join us for it. We'll have 48 hours tonight. Here Comes Mr. Clinton is the title of 40 hours. That will be at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 9 in the Central Time Zone. For now, Dan Rather with Charles Carlton Company. We'll be back with the parade in about an hour.
Stay with CBS News for continuing coverage.
Very much a campaign promise. Doesn't want to keep people on welfare, prefers that there be workfare. And he said we must not expect always something for nothing, not only from government or necessarily from each other. As President Bush leaves, President Clinton comes in with a public commitment to reform the political system, to reform campaign reform. And he said exactly what George Bush and Ronald Reagan before him would always have said: the greatest strength is the power of American ideas, which are, President Bush has pointed this out many times, still new in many lands. President Bush says goodbye to the people who have flown him so many times to so many places. I'm not sure, David, that he's the most traveled president, but he has traveled.
I wouldn't say most traveled because he only had one term, but in the day of Air Force Two, which is so comfortable and so easy, you sleep on it, eat on it.
This photograph will go on all those walls, too. We saw early today at Blair House on Pennsylvania Avenue, as President Clinton was waiting for his family, a little of that Clinton peak. Get it moving, folks. When I want something done, I want it done. This man is astonishingly gracious to a fault, David, with people in all walks of life, and it will serve him, not to be too presumptuous about it, but it will serve him immensely well in his post-presidential life, I think.
Well, he may wear that hat they just gave him. I think it's called a field cap. One last time. Very rarely does a statesman get onto or off an airplane with a camera there that he doesn't stop and make a speech. Bush said no speech. Didn't even have a platform for it.
I know that Mrs. Bush, if not looking forward to this moment, does treasure what she perceives to be the opportunity to have more of George to herself. He has said he's going to go into the grandparent business. This has been very tough on Mrs. Bush, and a lot of people perhaps don't appreciate it. She's been a very public first lady. She's committed herself to literacy. She has been in the pantheon of first ladies one who has engendered enormous affection all across the country. And the question for her probably now is whether or not she really does have George Bush as much to herself as she hopes she will. She knew before this political campaign was over that he was going to lose. He now saying goodbye to members of his cabinet. Just to Mrs. Bush there is Jack Kemp, Housing and Urban Development, widely regarded now to be a serious candidate for the Republican nomination 4 years from now. Dan Quayle really fought for his man in this presidential campaign, no question about that, David.
Did him a lot of good, did himself a lot of good. He was very effective, not effective enough, of course, but he did well in the campaign.
But as this president goes up the steps for the last time, I cannot help but think of the words of President Clinton when he said on the west face of the Capitol, the American people have summoned the change that is celebrated today. Raised their voices in an unmistakable chorus, cast votes in historic numbers, though certainly not all for Bill Clinton. And it is his view that the American people have changed the presidency, the political process, the face of the Congress.
The luncheon menu: grilled salmon, rosemary chicken, pecan rice, ginger carrots, broccoli is on the menu. It would not have been in the previous administration. Apple, cranberry, brown Betty, creme anglaise. The wine will be the Jekyll Estate Chardonnay 1990 and the Cabernet from the same vineyard, 1989.
There will be a presidential toast from the chairman of the inaugural ceremony, Senator Wendell Ford, who, by the way, had this comment about the broccoli. He said it was not a jab at George Bush. He said we understood very clearly that President Bush didn't like broccoli, but President-elect Clinton does, so we'll have some broccoli at the luncheon. It's that simple.
All right, let's go to Andrews Air Force Base now, where 2800 as it's being called for this trip because it's not carrying the President of the United States, but instead the former President. We asked some children in Santa Monica from the Franklin Elementary School and Lincoln Middle School to say what they would have to say to Mr. Bush. And, pardon me, this is from Farnsworth Elementary School in Chicago, and this is what they wrote to him.
Dear President Bush, there are a lot of wonderful things you've done that I am thankful for.
For keeping America's children
away from drugs.
For sending the troops to Kuwait during Operation Desert Storm.
Thank you, President Bush, for bringing food to those hungry Somalians and clearing out the gangs. For all you have done to keep peace between the United States and other countries.
For signing the American Disability Act.
You've been a wonderful president for the past 4 years. I was hoping that you would win the election. I even asked my mom and dad to vote for you.
Just because you weren't chosen in the 1992 election doesn't mean you lost. It means it's someone else's turn.
Thank you, President George Bush, for everything you have done for the world.
Very touching and a wonderful child sentiment. Doesn't mean you lost, it's just someone else's turn.
Nice thoughts. I even asked my mommy and daddy to vote for it.
Right. On board with George Bush is James Baker. This is not how he expected to be leaving Washington either. He treasured his job as the Foreign Minister of the United States, Secretary of State. He believed that he was making progress in the Middle East when he was summoned by his old friend from their Texas days, George Bush, to run the campaign. And it must be said, did not distinguish himself in that capacity.
No, he too is heading off to write his memoirs.
Right.
The subject of a considerable bidding war among various publishing houses, but his typewriter, or word processor, I should say, these days, is going to be quite busy down in Texas.
Plane that carried him to the Persian Gulf, most recently to Somalia, to Moscow for the signing of an important arms reduction agreement with Boris Yeltsin. Took him to Helsinki to meet with Gorbachev as they put together the alliance for what was going on in the Persian Gulf. The economic summit meetings with the other leaders of the industrial world. Now bears him from the nation's capital to his adopted home of Texas.
It was the part of the job, Tom, that intrigued him most, that he obviously most thoroughly enjoyed, and I guess it could be argued was in great part his undoing.
Right.
He was a man who relished his personal relationships with other world leaders, used those relationships to do business, focused his attention on those relationships, and ultimately that attention is what rubbed an awful lot of American voters the wrong way.
Well, better to be going this way than the way Richard Nixon, for example, left Washington. He got on Air Force One and flew to California in utter disgrace, having been the first president to resign that office, and now he has repaired himself to a degree. George Bush fought the good fight and lost on even terms.
There's no
John Chancellor, John Cochran, are you still out there?
Just for a note, there's no easy way to go unless you win the last election.
Nobody likes to lose, Brian.
Yes.
John Chancellor, like almost everything else in the world, Air Force One is getting bigger these days. Remember those rides in the old 707 cramped in the back?
It was. It seems the old one now, which was an enormous airplane, seems like about a 1948 convertible coupe. Right. Compared to what they have now, the biggest airplanes you ever saw. Tom, I thought it was, as long as we're all writing social notes from all over here, I thought the president's farewell to the vice president, or Mr. Bush's farewell to Mr. Quayle, was peremptory at least. And it was just sort of a wave and up the stairs.
Right.
He hugged Mrs. Quayle, but I don't know if you noticed that or not, but it was just sort of a hand, so long, pal.
Yeah.
It was very much in passing. You wonder, without reading too much into that, if that was simply because he was struggling to control his own emotions and wanted out of that scene.
That is I think probably the right thing to say, is that he just didn't want to get emotional with anybody, although Mr. Quayle did say some pretty sharp things about the White House and the campaign last fall.
Yeah, I think my guess is he wanted to get on the airplane and get out of town, as they say. Some of you now may be cutting away for local news. For the rest of you, the Clinton coverage will continue on this inaugural day in just a moment here on NBC.
parade. Cool, crisp, clear. You have that sense that you can see forever out there on the horizon. Joining me again to watch and listen and enjoy, my CBS News colleague and friend, Charles Corral. Charles, the spirit, the tone, the soul of this inaugural day, if you will, is off to a very good start.
I think you could argue the proposition that there's never been a crowd as big as this in the history of the nation's capital. And you're right, it's an extraordinarily happy crowd, a very young one by and large. And everything that we've been saying about the torch being passed to a new generation is visible out there on the street. I've just spent a half an hour looking down at the folks who are waiting. Some of them have been waiting for many hours for this parade to begin. And heavens to Betsy, some of them are wearing T-shirts on a January day in Washington.
And didn't Maya Angelou do a good job of capturing the moment?
She'll be so glad to hear that you said that. She worked so hard on that speech. I visited her a couple of weeks ago in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where she is professor of American Studies at Wake Forest University. And you could see the strain of writing a speech that she knew in advance was going to be anthologized, was going to outlive her, was going to be compared to Robert Frost's poem, The Gift Outright, the one he gave in 1961 at that cold day at the Kennedy inauguration. And worst of all, she said she knew that the next day millions of junior high school students were going to be told, well, now you have to learn this poem, and they would be looking at it and saying, how many lines in that thing?
She's going to get all over, I'm sorry, she's going to get all over both of us. You said her speech. That was a poem. That was P-O-E-M, right?
It was a poem indeed, and she is a user of the language, isn't she? I thought that was the high point of the early afternoon in many ways.
And we're going to try to replay that as the afternoon goes along in case you missed it, and indeed those of us who heard it are eager to hear it again. In the meantime, let's go down to the parade route, and CBS This Morning co-anchor Paula's on. Paula?
Hi, Dan. I'm standing here at the corner of 14th and Pennsylvania, where several thousand people have descended upon the area, many of whom have been lined up since 7 o'clock this morning to queue up for a spot to see the
Others, it's a very eclectic parade. You're going to see the youth of this administration reflected in the parade. For instance, a gay and lesbian band along the parade route, a lawn chair demonstration group, a reggae band with dreadlocks. And then I think the one that is going to catch all of our eyes is Elvis. Elvis impersonator on a float, and some members of Elvis's original group is going to be on that float. And then there's a tumbling team from Chicago. They say that they are faster than the Chicago Bulls and more powerful than the Bears. The Bears! Dan, back to you.
Thanks, Connie. I'm remembering, Connie, my first inauguration, I came up to the booth, the late Chet Huntley, almost exactly where you are, had me up to the booth, and I remember, it sticks in my mind, that President Kennedy, it was a very cold day, if you remember, snow everywhere,
yes.
Had his hat on. Just as he got up to the reviewing stand, his father, the late Joe Kennedy's interviewing stand, and for the first and only time that day, President Kennedy, in the parade, took off his hat and looked straight at his father.
A wonderful moment.
What a moment. We'll be back after these messages.
In that vein, President Clinton said this morning, let's give this capital back to the people to whom it belongs.
Thank you very much. Senator Ford, Mr. Speaker, Majority Leader Gebhardt, Senator Mitchell, Senator Dole, Senator Michael, I'm Representative Michael. I'd like to begin by saying I didn't get much sleep last night. If I get through this, it'll be a tour de force. Al Gore and I stayed up a long time talking last night about this day and this country and what we hope that we could do. I want to say first how very grateful I am to the Congress for the exertions here to make this inaugural day such a meaningful and wonderful one. I would like to especially thank Senator Ford, who worked so hard to make sure everything went off without a hitch, and he did. I also thank you for the wonderful gift of Crystal, the letter opener, which I will treasure always, that proved that we did get enough electoral votes to be here today. Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted to have that key. However, with all respect, I can't believe you were fully briefed about my proclivities in lobbying legislators to let me come up here without an invitation. I may be here all the time. Why, just when you said you wished me well in untangling my relationships with Congress, my head, almost as if by magic, tilted in Senator Dole's direction. I make two serious points. Once in a generation, we really are called upon to redefine the public interest and the common ground. I honestly do believe much of what we have to do today is work that knows no necessary partisan label and does not fall easily within the conventional divisions of liberal and conservative or Republican and Democrat. The second point I wish to make is that I cannot succeed as president unless Congress itself succeeds and the American people like the Congress again, too, or I seek to do. And to do, we have to work together and move forward together. So I would like, in gratitude and respect, to propose a toast to a new partnership in America's government. Here it is.
President Clinton is the very soul of brevity today, both his inaugural address and his toast here in Statuary Hall. That's Reverend Billy Graham, who gave the benediction at the inauguration this morning, which he has been doing for many years.
We had dinner last night with President Bush, just a very small group, but that's how President Bush spent his last evening.
Mr. President, exactly 2 hours and 16 minutes ago, you became President of these United States. And through the magic of your hard labor here, I'd like to give you a picture of that occasion.
Yeah,
just
wonderful.
as quick as we can.
Well, President Clinton spoke this morning about the magic of technology. What better example than to have a color photograph framed and presented 2 hours and 16 minutes after he became president?
We'll take it off your hands and see that it gets to Chelsea because she's keeping all the mementos. Thank you all very, very much. The luncheon is over, and we look forward to a new beginning and a great 4 years and a terrific parade and hopefully a short night for you, Mr. President, so we can go. Thank you all very, very
well,
much.
Well, Senator Ford of Kentucky, we're going to go overseas for just a moment now. You heard the Speaker of the House, Thomas Foley, there make reference to the traditions that we have inherited in this country from the British, which still pertain under that great dome. The first guest to join us this afternoon happens to be the British Prime Minister.
Is in charge of all this. Tell us what you're trying to do, sir.
Well, what we're trying to do is we're trying to show that everybody can work together.
And you're going to build a house by the end of this parade, is that correct?
By the end of this parade, we will have a house built.
Can somebody live in it?
Somebody can live in it once the insulation's put on the inside.
All right, that's quite a project. And to show you what they mean by a new beginning, Peter, if you look at the back of this house, there are youngsters here with building blocks trying to show people that it's not only the older generation, but the young generation, too. And as you know, Bill Clinton prides himself as being a baby boomer. Well, this young lady here in the red right here is the daughter of baby boomer Stephen Stills. She is the daughter of one of the Crosby, Stills, and Nash singers who played such a part in the inaugural celebration.
Well, you know what they say, but you can't get on a float unless you got connections, right?
I guess so, Peter.
But just to clarify, that house is going to be built on a float as it goes down the parade route, right?
That's exactly right. They started about 30 minutes ago. They will be finished in a couple hours.
Okay, Bill, see what else you can find us. We'll come back and talk to you.
Okay, Peter.
Elsewhere on the parade route is ABC's Carol Simpson. Carol.
Hi, Peter. I'm down at Freedom Plaza at 13th and Pennsylvania,
And the first thing I have to say about this parade is this is the most beautiful day I can ever remember. This is my 5th inaugural, and I'm burning up with clothes. We all dressed very warmly because it was very cold this morning, but now it's warmed up and it's just a beautiful day. I'm standing with a crowd of people here that have been here since 5 o'clock this morning, and we have one goal in mind, and that is to get President Clinton over to say hello to us. So all these people are going to help me do that.
Well, there's a prize if you do, Carol. I must tell you, we...
I'm enjoying the music here on the east front of the Capitol right now. We're waiting for President Clinton and the inaugural committee and the entire entourage to come down those steps behind me. He will then do a formal review of the troops here on the plaza. This is the first time he'll do this as commander-in-chief. I'm not sure how you know what to do when it's the first time, but I'm sure he will. And I think it probably must be something of an awesome sight, a reminder to him of the power of the office he's assumed. He's come such a long way. We got to be a little bit curious about what might have been happening, say, a year ago. It turns out that just a year ago today, there was a debate in New Hampshire. There were 5 candidates. It was a very brutal debate. I doubt if a year ago he thought he'd be reviewing anybody's troops. Dan?
Thanks, Susan. Charlie?
That's true, isn't it? I mean, how a year is such a short time. A year ago is when the whole Jennifer Flowers thing came out. It appeared that his 3-month-old candidacy was dead in the water. And look at the screen today. Here is the chief executive of the nation.
I hear music. This is my country. I hope they can bring some of that music up as we... let's just listen to it for a minute. Charles, in the interview with President Clinton for 48 Hours tonight, I'm not sure we're using this cut, but at one point I asked him, what about those who say you're soft at the center? Good politician, maybe a good leader, but you can't say no. And Bill Clinton came back quickly and said, I hope anybody who thinks that, this is a paraphrase, will think about the campaign when I, Bill Clinton, in effect, got up off the deck twice when everybody thought I was out. Once when the publicity about Jennifer Flowers came, and the second time, about 10 days behind that, about the Vietnam draft letter. It all seems as long ago as the Napoleonic campaigns, but it was only a year ago. And he pointed to that, saying, if you think I can't say no, if you think I'm not tough enough to handle this job, go back and read the newspaper clippings about that. Well, we've got terrific stuff lined up for you this afternoon on the parade route. What we're trying to do here is to bring you all the pomp and circumstance, all the noise and silliness, and yes, all the history and tradition of this inaugural day. Right now, we are looking for the new President of the United States and his wife, Hillary Clinton, and his daughter, Chelsea, to walk out of the Capitol. They have done so just coming out the door. This is on the opposite side of the Capitol from where the swearing-in took place. President Clinton and Vice President Gore will be escorted up Pennsylvania Avenue by members of all 5 branches of the U.S. military, as well as by local police and other dignitaries. Down the marble steps they come. Phil Brooks, our expert archivist, is here with us as President and Commander-in-Chief of the United States Military Forces. Bill Clinton returns a salute, one of the first salutes he's returned as president. He returned one right after his swearing in out on the west side. But I wanted to ask you, Phil, I'm trying to remember, I don't believe that in the last half-century plus we've had a president of the United States who did not serve in the military.
That's correct.
Bill Clinton is the first. Ruffles and flourishes, hail to the chief. And then the stars and stripes forever. Chipper Gore, and the Gore children, also up watching as the fife and drum corps comes in. The Gore family, Mary Elizabeth, nicknamed Chipper Gore. Nobody ever calls her the name of Chipper anymore. Watching with the Gore children, 3 daughters, Karina, Kristen, and Sarah, 19, 15, 14, and son Albert Gore III, who's 10. Albert Gore Sr., former senator and father of Senator Gore, is on hand. The Clinton family, wife, of course, Hillary Rodham Clinton, age 45, daughter Chelsea. Chelsea is 12. President Clinton's mother, Virginia Kelly, is with him today, been much in evidence. We've remarked several times how much she seems to be enjoying this. God bless her, she deserves it. She earned it. Half-brother Roger Clinton is here, parents-in-law Hugh and Dorothy Rodman, once of Illinois, now of Arkansas, also here. Let's bring in Susan Spencer. Susan, as the fife and drum corps comes by.
Well, Dan, the one thing that I guess it shouldn't have surprised me, but sort of did surprise me, is the sight of all of these people up there. Of course, I guess I knew that the children would be along, but it's been a very long time since there have been children of this age running around the White House. And I know a lot has been said about the pressures that are going to be put on Chelsea Clinton, also on the Gore children. This is, I guess, their first test. They have to endure today or enjoy today, and they'll learn very soon what's expected of them.
Military escort shaking hands with the new First Family. Susan, earlier today in our coverage, somewhere along the way, somebody said something about resentment in Washington, D.C., in some quarters, about Chelsea not going to public school. You live here. It's been, and I did for 10 years, but don't live here now. It's been my experience that, yes, there are some people who have resentment about that and some have disappointment about it, but there's also widespread understanding that, as President Hillary Clinton said, we didn't want to sacrifice our child's education to principle.
Well, I think that's right, Dan. I know that this was a discussion that went on among the Clintons for literally weeks. This was just a huge decision, and the question was how could you play it so that it would be right either for the family and politically. It was really a no-win situation. If they had sent Chelsea to public school, undoubtedly they would have been criticized for having perhaps not provided her the best possible education they could have in Washington for political reasons. So I think they felt they really couldn't win either way, and they did what they thought was best for her.
Actually, I think the quote was, we didn't want to take the chance of sacrificing our child's education to policy. Well, whatever, the First Family now has entered the limousine. This is the bullet-resistant and bomb-resistant, specially constructed limousine, in which they will ride down Pennsylvania Avenue, if indeed they choose to ride. Question, as we do a little quick swish pan with the camera there, is whether at any point the Clintons will get out and walk. We shall see very soon. Charlie, I remember very well, I know you do, we were in this very same booth, not wearing these same clothes, unfortunately, but when President Carter and Mrs. Carter walked the parade route.
I'm sure the security people here today, thinking with hundreds of thousands of people in this crowd, there must be a handful of them who wish the Clinton family no good. I'm sure they hope he stays inside that limousine, as the security people did the day Jimmy Carter chose to take the stroll. But it was a bit of symbolism, started, as you said, by Thomas Jefferson, show that he could get where he wanted to go on his own 2 feet like anybody else. And Jimmy Carter chose to follow that example. We'll see whether the Clintons stay in that car or get out when they get to Pennsylvania Avenue.
And in the spirit of accuracy, Charles, we were up in and around this booth, but our CBS News coverage during the inauguration of President Carter was presided over by our good friend and still living legend Walter Cronkite. You and I were in sporting roles at that time.
Yeah, I was one of those who assured Walter that Jimmy Carter intended to ride after all. Just then, he opened the door and got out and started walking.
As the parade forms up and is within seconds of moving away from the Capitol down Pennsylvania Avenue, let's take a quick break. We'll be back with all the sights and sounds in just a moment, so stay here with us.
Window support bill. Window support.
Well, you can hear the music in the deep background there. Let's see if we can pick up Susan Spencer. Susan? They're not going to work for the moment as Susan tries to get herself in position there to ride along with the parade. Susan, are you there?
I am here.
Well, what's happening?
Well, it's a little hard to hear. I'm sorry. The first thing that's going to happen when President Clinton comes around this corner in just a minute is that he's going to see a big sign that says Republicans for Clinton, which I think will probably be very gratifying and is, of course, one of the reasons that he's where he is right now. Dan?
Now the limousine is making that turn, off at the Capitol grounds and on to Pennsylvania Avenue. Over the years, there have been a number of updated and remodeled versions of the presidential limousine. This one has all, in addition to all the latest in bullet-resistant glass and bomb-resistant underpinning in the vehicle, it has all the latest communications. Remember President Johnson during his presidency, the late LBJ, was so proud of a limousine that had speakers concealed in the front of the car and in the back, where from inside he could ride along and say hello to crowds and speak to them while riding along in the limousine. We still have that capacity in this particular limousine, I'm told. Let's pick up Linda Douglas, who's waiting for the first elements to arrive. Linda?
Well, the procession is now finally reaching the corner of 3rd and Constitution, and people are terribly excited here. They've been waiting for hours and hours, and in spite of the fact that this has been a sort of rock and roll inauguration with some bohemian qualities along the way as the baby boom generation takes over, this is in fact a traditional and patriotic scene that is causing the waving of flags and causing some eyes even to mist up here along the parade route as people watch the tradition pass by. They are hoping, of course, that President Clinton will pop out and rush up to the rope line and shake hands, as he's been known to do throughout the campaign. And there is a woman standing here with a sign that she's going to hold up in hopes that he'll see it and decide that he wants to shake her hand. But at this point, they may have to settle for a picture of the parade.
Linda, the mood of the crowd seems, to me, incredibly patient in
who writes about a black detective at South Central, and Walter Mosley has been here at the inaugural. He even gave a reading at the National Theater. So I'm hoping that I will be named head of the White House Office of Detective Fiction sometime soon.
Professor Sherrod, do you hear much talk in California, many complaints that while Bill Clinton, the candidate, went to Los Angeles in the wake of the Los Angeles riots itself?
This man has the capacity and the ability. He was deeply influenced, molded, and shaped by the Civil Rights Movement. He's a believer in the philosophy of the movement, a believer in Martin Luther King Jr.
Excuse me, Congressman. President Clinton is getting out of his limousine, as you well know, would know better than most people, all too typical of him. No surprise here. He's going to mix and mingle for a while and not indeed walk the parade route. Let's pick up some of the sounds and sights as he does that.
Approaching Presidential Reviewing Stand, the United States Army Band.
Let's see if we can pick up Susan Spencer down there near, if not exactly where, President Clinton and Hillary Clinton are now beginning to walk. Susan?
Dan, I'm sorry I'm having so much trouble hearing. Pandemonium is obviously broken out. I'm in such a terrible position here. I'm having trouble even seeing what's going on. My sense is that he has, in fact, gotten out of the car or may shortly.
Oh, no, he's definitely gotten out of the car. You can't see the picture we can see there.
Out of windows, which is sort of surprising given the security problems. They've been climbing up on light poles. Everybody is seeing lots and lots of signs. Gays for Clinton, anti-abortion people for Clinton. And we expect that if he stops here much longer, he's getting pretty wild out here. I'm going to have to turn it back to you, Dan, because I'm having so much trouble hearing actually what's happening.
Thanks, Susan Spencer. President and Hillary Clinton hand in hand walking up Pennsylvania Avenue. Temperature now is edged up into the low 40s, so the president has left that new double-breasted overcoat that he's been wearing the last few days back in the limousine. The new First Lady, Hillary Clinton, was born in Chicago, Illinois. She grew up in suburban Park Ridge, Illinois, and her father, Hugh Rodham, was a businessman, and her mother was, as many women were of her generation, one who worked mostly in the home, not outside the home. And the Rodhams now, they moved to Arkansas about the time Hillary's husband, Bill, started making a run for the governorship and was elected governor. Congressman John Lewis, are you hearing much from your constituents in way of concern that Hillary Clinton is maybe going to have an office in the West Wing of the White House rather than the East and be too big an influence, quote unquote, on President Clinton?
No, the people in the 5th District of Georgia, and like most Americans, I think are very pleased that we're going to have a young First Lady who's going to be very active in the affairs of our country. She's very concerned about the well-being of children. I think this is good. This is healthy for our whole political system.
Charlie Carroll, you travel the two-lane blacktops and back roads. You hear people talking about it much, raising much concern about it, or is it mostly one of those things reporters just write about it and Washington gets all the tizzy about?
No, you do hear a good deal about Hillary Clinton being too great an influence, and it's a little bit of a puzzle to me why you hear that, but it truly is something that people, especially conservatives, and especially in the South, somehow find unseemly. I don't think most Americans will.
They're roughly in front of the Treasury building now. Those of you who know Washington know how close the Treasury building is to the White House itself. On Pennsylvania Avenue, still a number of strides away from where they'll be reviewing the parade itself a little later on. But anybody who's ever been around Hillary Clinton knows the following things about her. One, she is smart. This woman did not go to school just to eat her lunch. She's done her studies, done her homework. Two is that she's very good at sizing up situations, pausing, thinking about it, thinking about what she wants to say, what she wants to do. And it occurs to me, Charles and Congressman Lewis, that in recent weeks, if not months, that's what she's been doing. So sizing up. She may know a lot about what she wants to do as First Lady, but she's been very prudent in not moving too soon and letting it be known exactly how and what she wants to do when she's in the White House.
You were talking about America's blacktop roads, Dan. John Lewis and I were on the Freedom Rides together. John Lewis as a participant and I as a reporter. That was a rough blacktop road, and I was just thinking, John Lewis, when I saw Maya Angelou, who grew up in Stamps, Arkansas, up there on the podium today with Bill Clinton, who grew up, albeit in an entirely different, segregated world in Hope, Arkansas, that was something we couldn't have ever expected to see. Maybe you and Martin Luther King and some other leaders of the movement could expect it, but I never expected to see such a thing in America. And really, maybe there is a little bit of progress for justice and humanity in this world.
Well, Charlie, I think there's been a great deal of progress during the past few years, but we must keep in mind what Martin Luther King Jr. said when he came to this Capitol on May 17, 1957. He said, "Give us the ballot, give us the vote." And we would send men of conscience, men of goodwill to Washington. I think Dr. King would be very happy and very proud to see Bill Clinton as president today.
Well, would you have expected to send a Southern governor back in those days?
Well, those days, someone would have had to sort of convince me. Things change, and I think we have seen what I like to call the nonviolent revolution in American politics.
Well, that's exactly President Clinton's main theme, isn't it? Things change.
Yes.
And that the best a leader can try to do is ride the change, maybe nudge, if not direct the change, but understand that America is change.
And this man is so prepared to lead us into that period of change, into the 21st century.
As we see President Clinton and Hillary Clinton walking on Pennsylvania Avenue, Hillary Clinton, who earlier in the day was in a blue dress, still has on her blue hat. She's gotten a lot of favorable comment, including some from these porters during the day. She now has on a suit, which I will not attempt to describe, fashion not being my long suit by any measure, but it's slightly orangish and check.
Well,
we need to get Sally Quinn back up in here, but it's worth mentioning that Linda Bloodworth Thomason and Harry Thomason of California, two very successful Hollywood producers, have tried to help the Clintons in many ways, including talking about style. Everything from style of dress to style of positioning yourself in an image way. And I can only say that if they're half as successful with the Clintons as they've been with some of the CBS primetime schedule, then President Clinton and Hillary Clinton are going to do pretty well indeed. But we know that Linda Bloodworth Thomason has talked to Hillary a great deal about, what to wear, when to wear it. And sometimes, it's my understanding, Hillary Clinton takes her advice, and sometimes she doesn't. But she certainly looks very fashionable this afternoon. And also, no surprise, seems to be enjoying every minute.
I don't think it's politically correct anymore, is it, Dan, to be able to describe well the First Lady's clothing? In which case, you're right in style, because you didn't do a very good job describing that dress.
I did a plumb awful son. But let the record show that earlier today I also described what President Clinton was but look, you have to be what you are, and I don't have much patience with all this politically correct stuff anyway, but your point is well taken. But here's the point, as I try to dig myself out of this very deep hole, that President Clinton has not changed in any way his attire since this morning. He has on dark single-breasted two-button suit with handmade buttonholes on the sleeve, I'm told, as befits a president, but he hasn't changed his attire, and Mrs. Clinton, Hillary Clinton, has changed hers a bit. So, moving right along, Congressman Lewis, we were talking about Bill Clinton and his agenda of his theme of trying to bring the country together. Is he or is he not going to have difficulty keeping the focus on the economy and such things as the politics of inclusion in this country with so many hot spots out around the world? Somalia, what's left of Yugoslavia, Iraq, hyperinflation seemingly right around the corner in the Soviet Union. Can he do it? Can he keep the focus on domestic affairs with all of that danger overseas?
I think Bill Clinton can and will, in spite of the problems in Somalia, Eastern Europe, the Middle East. I think he will. He put together an unbelievable cabinet, young men and young women that are prepared to go to work. This man is an all-inclusive type guy. His main concern of the domestic agenda.
I'm not going to ask you whether he has asked your advice. I don't think that's fair. But should President Clinton ask your counsel what to do about Saddam Hussein, what would you, as one member of Congress, tell him?
Well, I would tell him and suggest to him to be cautious, but to be strong, to be firm, and try to negotiate. We need to lay down the burden of war and violence. There's too much violence, too many killings. We got to end it. We got to create a world at peace with itself.
Connie Chung can now see the Clintons as they approach the reviewing stand in front of the White House. Connie?
Yes, Dan. It's really getting exciting here at the reviewing stand because the reviewing stand is filled with all the cabinet members, family members, and they're waiting for Bill and Hillary Clinton, the president and the first lady, to arrive. You know, Washington is not unfamiliar to Bill Clinton. He went to college here, Georgetown, with a degree in international affairs, and he worked on Capitol Hill for Senator J. William Fulbright and for the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. Nor is it not something that Hillary is unfamiliar with. She worked for the House Judiciary Committee. Actually, the inquiry, boy, it's getting noisy here. Everyone is cheering. The inquiry into the impeachment of Richard Nixon. So that job was actually offered to Bill Clinton at the time, he couldn't take it. He said, I know a terrific lawyer that you could take, and that was Hillary Clinton. Now, the president is right in our view, just in front of the reviewing stand, or just about there. They're shouting, we want Clinton. We want Bill.
Did you hear your dad and Ed tell her?
And actually, the family members, you can't even see them. They haven't even noticed that they're really there in front of them just yet. Mrs. Kelly, Clinton's mother, is looking the other way. There she goes. Now they're looking. Now they're cheering. There she goes. There's Mrs. Kelly. Mom, proud as ever.
Connie, I was thinking back to a time in the 1970s when a very young Bill Clinton made his first race for Congress. I was in an election night coverage, and I was the one who said, well, young Bill Clinton loses in Arkansas. And the next thing I know, somebody was on the phone saying, I'm Bill Clinton's mother, and I just want to tell you, Dan Rather, keep an eye on him. He's going places. And I said, this story has the added advantage of being true, as Dr. Kissinger sometimes says. And I wasn't sure that she was Bill Clinton's mother, and I have to be honest and say I wasn't even sure who Bill Clinton was at that time, but it turned out she was sure right when she said, keep an eye on him. The first time he loses doesn't mean he's going to be out of it forever. Because he came back. Did he ever?
Absolutely. You can see everyone is standing up now in the reviewing stand. You'll get a shot of it as these cameras roll forward. He's walking right by the reviewing stand. In just a moment, you'll see. Is he? He's just beyond it, I can see now.
Connie, the president is looking slim and trim and fit. His program of trying to watch his diet with Hillary Clinton's help and running 20 miles a week, which is what he told me in our interview for 48 hours he tries to run, has paid big dividends.
Absolutely. He looks terrific. I love it when the two of them begin to hold hands. I'm a hand holder myself, and every once in a while Hillary Clinton seems to be wandering off the main divider line here, and he kind of brings her back, takes her hand. They walk down a little bit more.
Those of you watching along with us, what you see just in the background there on the right-hand side of your screen, that's the reviewing stand to which the Clintons will be going once they make their turn into the White House itself, which is, maybe 25 yards maximum from where they are right now. They'll be making a right turn onto the White House grounds. They're standing almost directly in front of your position now, aren't they, Connie?
Yeah, actually, you know, Dan, they have moved beyond the reviewing stand, way beyond. Normally, you would think that they would enter a little bit earlier, but they went way beyond the reviewing stand.
Did you see that little hop and skip that the new president made just there? One of joy? Sort of.
That was a camera hop and skip.
It was one of those things, am I happy? Let me show you how happy I am. You know, the price is so high, isn't it, Congressman Lewis, in modern American politics? You can't blame anybody who goes through the fire, comes out the other end a winner for at least wanting to have a few hours of celebration and soak up the triumph before he has to go to work.
Well, this young man worked very, very hard for this day. A lot of people. And it's a great day for America. It's a great day for the democratic process, really.
What do you think was the turning point for him? He looked at one point, he was practically counted out a number of times, but at one point as late as early summer of 1992, he looked to be at least in intensive care.
Well, he didn't give up. He kept his eyes on the prize. He held on to his dream. He didn't give up. He kept coming back. He has a tremendous amount of faith, and he's a hard worker. No one can out-campaign Bill Clinton.
When did he first ask you to give him your help, give him your hand in running for the presidency?
Well, back in 1991, he asked for my help and for my assistance, and I had a good feeling for this man. I just felt that he was the right person to do the job, to lead America society into the 21st century. It was the right decision. I'm glad I made that decision to support him. I think the state of Georgia gave him his first real victory on March 3rd, 1992.
Well, certainly when he won the Georgia primary, that got everybody's attention because they said, well, the South has been the bedrock of the Republican victories through 2 Reagan and 1 Bush terms, and if the Democrats have a candidate who can make some inroads in the South, particularly, and let's talk about it as politicians too, particularly among white Southern males, then he might have a chance to carry the country. That was pretty much the thinking as he won the Georgia primary, wasn't it?
Yes. But you know, as Southerners and as Southern politicians, we can count, and we can count very well. And Bill Clinton can count. And he sought to include people, everybody. You see a lot of hugging and a lot of feeling and touching and patting. That is very warm. It's real. And I think that helped to get him over.
Charlie Carroll, what are the chances that something akin to the Jack Kennedy, Jackie kind of public interest level can be achieved, will be achieved by the Clintons? Sally Quinn, who was here earlier today, has been talking about that some. I'm not sure how she comes down in her opinion on it, but what do you think?
You know, Dan, I had trouble for a little while thinking of that young fellow John F. Kennedy as President of the United States. People forget that neither Richard Nixon nor John Kennedy, running against each other in 1960, seemed really mature enough to be President of the United States. I've been having a little trouble thinking of Bill Clinton as president, but the mind adjusts pretty quickly. When he was standing up there on the top of the Capitol steps about an hour ago, with the military salute passing before him, standing erect, with a serious expression on his face, suddenly it struck me, why, my goodness, this man is my president now. And I think something like that will be happening in millions of people's minds and hearts as we watch him assume this mantle today and over the next few days.
Well, they're back in the presidential limousine now. They've made the left turn, which was necessary, off of Pennsylvania Avenue to go, if you will, on the side of the executive office building. That's that huge building. Perhaps we can get a picture of it now, known around Washington as the big wedding cake, right next door to the White House. They'll go beside the executive office building and come back around on the back side of the White House and into the White House grounds. And then they will go, after a brief break to freshen up, they'll go to the parade reviewing stand, and we will watch the parade. All of that's still to come on our CBS News Inauguration Day coverage.
How can I ever forget one of my special customers, little Michael? Every week he'd come in, and every time he'd say, his eyes shining,
"Stork reason, please, Mrs. Lang."
One of those reasons I had to give him immediately. The others I put in a bag for him. Now there is Stork Chocolate Reason, a long-lasting, chewy chocolate caramel covered with rich chocolate, just right for Michael.
Stork Chocolate Reason, please, Mrs. Lang.
And Michael still eats the first one immediately. Stork Chocolate Reason, the everlasting chocolate chew.
The American Impressions Collection from Ethan Allen. Just because you don't have a lot of money to throw around doesn't mean you have to live with disposable furniture. Right now, there's a sale going on at your local Ethan Allen.
Helping someone take my pain and make it disappear.
Finally, someone understands all pain is not the same. New aspirin-free Bayer Select. Yes, aspirin-free.
For the help where it hurts.
Bayer Select. Not 1, but 5 aspirin-free products. Sinus, headache, nighttime, menstrual, and arthritis pain relief. Because all pain is not the same.
For the help where it hurts. With Bayer Select.
It's really important that the dog be bred right and then be fed right.
Tom Wilson, top breeder of champion Weimaraners.
I think pedigree is the one dog food that has the kind of chunks of meat in it that the dogs really like. Pedigree meat and the pedigree mealtime dry mixed together is the best combination I've ever found for my dogs. I've been feeding pedigree for almost 10 years now, and my dogs do so well on it I wouldn't change a thing.
Pedigree, developed with vets, recommended by top breeders.
Lloyd Bentsen has been confirmed by the United States Senate, officially and conclusively confirmed as the new Secretary of the Treasury. Bentsen was elected United States Senator from Texas in 1970. Of course, he ran for Vice President on the ticket with Michael Dukakis in 1988. He's 71 years old. He chaired the Senate Finance Committee. He is now officially the new Secretary of the Treasury. Let's go to the parade route and Harry Smith. Harry?
Dan, I want to tell you the president came by here at 7th and Pennsylvania more than a half an hour ago. If you can look behind me here just for a second, the crowd is as big as it was before. Nobody's going anyplace, but I want to show you what may be the highlight of my day. Skip, can you take a look at this? You see this? This is creativity. These are electric socks. And, of course, these are support socks. Now, whose idea?
This is my idea.
Your idea. And we also have another very interesting sign. How long? When did you all get out here? Because you've been out 7:30 this morning. Okay, these are the hardy folks. Look at this one. Bill in '96 and Hillary in 2000. There's an enthusiastic crowd out here, Dan, to say the least.
Harry Smith, thank you very much. As the parade makes its way toward the reviewing stand in front of the White House, we welcome to our CBS News Inauguration Day booth, Charlie Kuralt and I, Pamela Harriman, who some people, I know you don't like this, Pamela, some people call her the other Democratic First Lady of Washington. Ms. Harriman, you've known some of the great leaders of our times. I paused only because, as young as you are, it seems incredible to me, but you've known a lot of the great leaders, from Winston Churchill on. Personally and directly, how does Bill Clinton stack up?
Well, he has the same resolve and resilience that I saw in Winston Churchill in the dim days of the War of 1940.
And what makes you think he has that kind of bulldog resolve?
Because I've seen him through bad times and good times. I first knew him when he just lost the governorship of Arkansas the first time around. And you know, there's something about, to be great, which I believe he is, you have to have failure as well as success. And he had failure early, and I think he's bringing all of us success today.
What about this? There are any number of people, a lot of whom, like Bill Clinton, say, yes, yes, but. That whereas a Winston Churchill really didn't give a damn whether people liked him or not. He had a vision of what he wanted to do. That Bill Clinton cares whether people like him or not. That he suffers from what Scott Fitzgerald called the American disease. That he wants people to like him. Is that a problem for him?
Everybody wants to be liked. Winston Churchill wanted to be liked. He wasn't always liked. I think Bill Clinton is a people's person, and people mean a lot to him. And I think you see in the crowds today that he means a lot to people, and it's a very precious and wonderful commodity.
Hillary Clinton, your opinion, will she be the first lady to have an office in the West Wing, the presidential wing of the White House?
I think they've already had the First Lady's offices, but I think hers will be different. She is the first professional woman that we've had as First Lady, and I think that she can do enormous amount of good, and I suspect she will do it in a quiet way, but a very strong way.
She's become a lightning rod already, hasn't she?
Yes, well, she is. And you know, she represents, for women in this country, something that most of them today identify with, a working mother.
Pamela Harriman. Bill Plant is at the White House. Bill?
Well, Dan, the moving van is on the White House grounds unloading the personal effects of the Clinton family, which were picked up just last week in Arkansas. We watched, as a matter of fact, as some of these boxes were loaded into the van on last Friday, I believe it was. And on Saturday, we saw then President-elect Clinton in the lobby of the Arkansas governor's mansion just shaking his head because he couldn't quite believe that it was all over. They carried his chest of drawers down the stairs with the clothes still in it, he said, and put it on the truck. The amazing thing is that they move him in simply the 5 hours or so that it takes between his inauguration and the time that the first family first goes up to the family quarters of the White House after this parade is over. There's a staff here that will do just about anything, and that includes unpacking all the boxes. They'll be helped along by somebody who was familiar with the packing process, and all the clothes will be put away. Pretty handy, huh?
Pretty handy indeed, Bill. Les Aspin, Congressman of Wisconsin, chairman of the House Armed Services Committee, now has been officially confirmed, fully confirmed by the United States Senate as the new Secretary of Defense. Man to watch for, among other reasons. Secretary of Defense Aspin has been encouraging a much tougher line against the Serbians in what's left of Yugoslavia. It'll be interesting to see what that means for defense policy and for American foreign policy in the Clinton administration. Dan Rather with Charles Kuralt, and in our booth now, Pamela Harriman. We'll be back after these messages.
While no medicine can stop a cough completely, there is one that in 30 minutes can so significantly reduce your coughing, it's guaranteed or your money back. Vicks Formula 44. No wonder doctors recommend Formula 44's cough medicine 3 times more than codeine. Formula 44. Because the fewer the coughs, the better.
This is the beginning of fully conditioned, great-looking hair. Head & Shoulders 2-in-1. You get complete conditioners with our proven dandruff shampoo all in one for what could be the end of flakes and the beginning of something great. Head & Shoulders 2-in-1.
It's crystal clear. It's new from Cascade. Crystal Clear Rinse Agent. It adds an extra burst of Cascade sheeting action in the rinse cycle to wash away dulling residue for dishes that absolutely sparkle.
All God's creatures get constipated. It's only natural. And most of them solve it naturally, without chemicals. Now humans can too, with Per Diem, a 100% natural laxative that works just as fast as all the chemical ones. It's as natural as, well, being constipated.
It's official. We'll talk with President Bill Clinton's new chief of staff to find out how the plans for change will affect you tomorrow on CBS This Morning with Harry Smith and Paula Zahn.
Every community's worst enemy, a cop gone bad.
You pay me once a week.
To catch him, a good cop must put his life on the line.
We lost him.
On Top Cops, then. Are you worried what your kids are learning about sex in the classroom? Wait till you find out what they're learning on the school bus.
I was shocked.
Street Stories following Top Cops Thursday.
Parade time along Pennsylvania Avenue. Let's check in with Paula Zahn. Paula?
Hi, Dan. The Hope, Arkansas band is just passing in front of us here in the expensive bleacher seats, $50 a seat here. Was it worth spending that money?
Oh, absolutely. Ronald Reagan was elected president when I was 19 years old, and I was beginning to think I'd never see another Democrat in the White House. And thank goodness the day has come, and we're all here to celebrate.
But did you actually see the president?
Oh, yes. I saw the president.
For what, 2 seconds?
No, I saw him during his entire speech, but I was quite a ways away this morning at the ceremony.
And I bet you thought this day would never happen. You actually happened to work on the campaign.
Yes, I did, and we were just talking about the first fundraiser we had for President Clinton. 100 people showed up, and some of them grudgingly, and we said, just come and meet the man, just come listen to him speak, and you'll be won over, and they were, and little by little, he won over America.
So what are you feeling as you're watching this today?
I feel, as corny as it sounds, I feel like this is a new America. And I'm lucky that I'm young enough to enjoy it, and I just can't wait for wonderful things to start happening.
Did you actually get a glimpse of the president or not?
No, we didn't get a glimpse of him at all. He was just passing by. It was so crowded. So we decided we would just come over here and try and see what we could see. This is the closest we've been and the closest we've been able to get to.
Of course, with our luck, he decides to get out of the car 100 yards down the road from us. What has this been like for you and your family to enjoy today?
Well, it's very exciting. This is my first inaugural parade, and it's very exciting. So many people, though. You couldn't see too much because it was too many people, so.
But everybody's behaving pretty well. So in spite of the huge chorus here to get President Clinton's attention, he did point at us and wave, but that was just about it. It was worth it. We appreciate it. Back to you, Dan.
Thank you, Paula. Charles Kuralt has tracked down President Clinton's saxophone-playing roots back to his hometown band, and that band is here today. Charlie?
Yeah, it was a thrill to see him go by just now, Dan. It's a band with a great leader and a great reputation, the Hope High School Super Band. Maybe you remember from your own school days how one good teacher could always inspire you to do your best. At Hope High School, his name is Mr. Hesse.
This is the most important thing we have ever done. We are going to be playing for the president. I don't want us even remotely looking bad at any point, all right?
Let that sink in a minute. Then, drums. Robert Hesse is the band director, and he's not here to direct a pretty good band.
Playing it with a slur.
He's here to make the Hope High Super Band the best band in the land, and his inspiration has caught on in the band room. This little high school band has won more trophies than Mr. Hesse can shake a baton at. 9 times state champions in the last 11 years. Mr. Hesse thinks 11 of 11 would have been a lot better.
All right, stop right there. Stop, boom. All right? The most outstanding marching band in Arkansas needs to practice to go straight.
1 of every 7 students at Hope High plays in this band. And Mr. Hesse nudges them and goads them and kids them and teaches them. You know how inspiring a good teacher can be. Robert Hesse says, march with your heads up. Be proud.
We teach a lot of things other than just learning to play notes. We spend some time about responsibility and about leadership.
Today, they're marching down Pennsylvania Avenue, the hometown band of the President of the United States, leading the whole parade. Watch them as they go by. Their heads will be up. Well, we watched them as they went by, Dan, and their heads were up.
Thanks, Charlie. Our CBS News coverage of the Inauguration Day Parade continues in a moment.
Because no other pain is like your headache pain.
Put the help where it hurts.
Now there's new aspirin-free Bayer Select for headaches.
Put the help where it hurts. With Bayer Select.
It contains 2 powerful aspirin-free ingredients and helps relieve pounding headache pain. So reach for new Bayer Select, the one for headaches, because all pain is not the same.
Put the help where it hurts. With Bayer Select.
I found if you feed a lot of meat, and a good kind of meat like pedigree, you really get a nice shine to the coat.
John Woodring, top breeder of champion beagles.
A dog that's really fit, that's had really good nutrition, is definitely happier and makes a better pet. I only want my dogs to have the best food, and the best food we've found is pedigree and pedigree mealtime. I really like the pedigree meat mixed with the mealtime drying. I'd recommend pedigree to anybody who owns a dog, either a pet or a show dog.
Pedigree, developed with vets, recommended by top breeders.
Uh-oh, I forgot the cereal.
We'll get some. Come on. Oh, my favorite, Honey Bunches of Oats. Mine, too. We'll get 2 boxes. Mom won't mind.
I wonder what's keeping the kids.
I'll get them. Huh, the kids aren't here. Oh, well, I'll get my favorite, Honey Bunches of Oats.
With crispy corn and wheat flakes and crunchy oat bunches, it's the cereal your whole family will love.
3 boxes?
What do we do now? Get more milk?
Honey Bunches of Oats with almonds or honey roasted, the one cereal your whole family will love.
CBS News Inauguration Day coverage will continue.
This is CBS.
The 11 Action News team is the team to watch for breaking coverage of the Bill Clinton inauguration. Joe Quinn, Ann Jansen, editorial cartoonist George Fisher, and commentator Bob McCord will follow the events from Washington. Watch live inaugural reports, the Arkansas View, tonight at 6 and 10 on 11 Action News.
Service is friendly people. Service is a smile. Service is a familiar face. Service is a caring touch. Service is someone who's always there when you need them. And at the Roller Funeral Homes of Arkansas, service is a tradition that grows stronger every day.
We've got a unique practice in that my wife and I are both veterinarians.
We have a full-service veterinary clinic, a full-service pet shop, kind of a pet mart type thing.
Teamwork is paying off for Twin City Bank customers Kendall and Lisa Falk.
Plans for the future?
Well, I'd like to get rich and retire, but I don't think that'll happen anytime soon.
We went to the bank, told them all our plans.
They liked our idea, and they've pretty well just given us everything we asked for. Well, if we do anything else, the bank will definitely be involved.
Watch Starathon 93, Saturday night at 10:30 on KTHV Arkansas 11.
President Clinton and Hillary Clinton are in the presidential reviewing stand now. As the last strains of Hail to the Chief are played, they are behind a bullet-resistant glass set of panels. The president is there with his mother, all ready now to see the parade come right by in front of him. Chelsea, their 12-year-old daughter, back waving to some friends. That's Bill Clinton's mother in the white or light-colored coat. Let's check in with Harry Smith.
All right, Dan, we are back here at 7th in Pennsylvania with Felix Trammell. How you doing, Felix? How old are you?
8.
What school? 9. He's 9. What school do you go to?
St. Stephen's St. Agnes School.
And this guy has organized this entire line of people. These are flag-waving Americans, Dan, as you can well see. They've got their flags. You ready to get these people doing? Are you all ready? You ready? Okay. Felix, give it a go. 1, 2, 3. You've seen it at stadiums across the country. This is a new version of the wave. Dan.
We like it, Harry. We like it. We give it a 10 up here. As we wait for the parade to go right by in front of President Clinton and Hillary Clinton, let's bring in another guest here in our CBS News inauguration coverage booth. Joining Charles Carrault and me is Stephen Ford, son of former President Gerald Ford. Nice to see you again.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks.
You have memories of the time when your father, under very different circumstances, assumed both the burden and the honor of the presidency of the United States.
Well, we did. We came in at a very difficult time. The summer of 1974 in August, Nixon had to step down from office and Dad took over the reins of the country. There really wasn't a time for inauguration, the money to be spent like they are today in the celebration. It was a time at that period to heal the country and go forward. And they had a very small swearing-in ceremony, and we had a very small party that night, and they kept it pretty light, and we went on with the business of the country.
Any advice for Chelsea? What does the White House do to a family, and what does it do to a young person who lives in the White House?
Well, that was 17 years ago, so I was 18 years old at the time, and 10 Secret Service agents isn't really the group you want to hang around with at 18 years old. But I would tell Chelsea, I think she's under a little bit disadvantaged than we were. I had 2 older brothers, 1 younger sister. She's there by herself. She's younger. The White House is a very adult place. She should have as many of her friends over as she can. The White House, it's adult decisions, adult place. She should also become probably best friends with her Secret Service agents. And I guess the best thing I could tell her would be to make decisions with your heart and don't sit there and worry about what you think people think you should be doing. And once you make those kind of decisions, you'll be in trouble.
President Clinton and Hillary Clinton are seeing the U.S. Army 3rd Infantry and the U.S. Army Field Band follow right behind them, to be followed in order by the United States Military Academy, U.S. Army Colors, Arkansas National Guard Company, U.S. Army Reserve. Let's pick up some of what the Clintons are seeing and hearing.
Mr. Hesse will be proud of them. They're marching in step, keeping their chins up.
And Mrs. Clinton now has put her overcoat on as the chill will begin to descend along Pennsylvania Avenue. Steve Ford, how difficult is it? It has to be terribly difficult to keep any sense of perspective when you're a young person growing up in the White House.
Well, I saw some of the pictures you had earlier today, and the picture that struck me the most was when President Bush and his wife met the Clintons as they were coming to the White House to have tea, and the Gores were there, and I saw Chelsea and the Gore children, and the memories I had of standing there with your dad, who was a leader of the free world, and the fact that you were standing right there, and the whole world was always focused on that spot where he was, and you were standing next to him. It's a little difficult thing to swallow and understand at 18 years old, and I think Chelsea, even at 12, is going to be a little tougher. I saw earlier Mrs. Gore putting her arm around her son, and the boy was struggling, and, you got to let them be kids and enjoy it.
Well, Chelsea and her parents are now seeing the first of a dozen floats in this parade. Welcome Home America, the float. By the way, in our 48 Hours interview with now President Clinton, that'll be on tonight at 10 o'clock, 9 Central Time, the president, talks about talking to Chelsea about the move from Little Rock to Washington and the White House. One of the more interesting parts of that wide-ranging interview, which will be heard on 48 Hours tonight. Well, the parade will go on for a long while now as the shadows descend along Pennsylvania Avenue and in front of the White House on the first day of the new era for the United States of America, the Clinton era. For the 41st time, the presidency of the United States has passed from one man to another. And whether you voted for Bill Clinton or not, it is a day to celebrate because after more than 200 years, the United States Constitution still works. We, the people, make it work. And we, the people, will have more about this historic day coming our way throughout the evening on the CBS Evening News. Then on a special edition of 48 Hours, you'll go behind the scenes of the inauguration with a 48 Hours called Here Comes Mr. Clinton, and we'll bring you an exclusive interview, CBS News interview with President Clinton. For now, with Charles Kuralt, Dan Rather in Washington. See you again soon on this Inauguration Day.